I don't even know where to begin with this episode. The following guest, Dr. Hillman, has a master's degree in bacteriology, a master's degree in classics, as well as a PhD in classics, until he was eventually investigated by the Catholic Church for demon possession, which led to him being ejected by his university. Now, although I did read his book, The Chemical Muse, before we recorded this podcast, it quickly became clear that I was not prepared for what was coming. And I'm still trying to process this conversation weeks after we recorded it. Due to the provocative and unsettling nature of this episode, it has been heavily censored with parts redacted. However, we posted the full uncensored version in its entirety on Patreon if you want it. You better buckle up, folks. Please hammer that subscribe button below and enjoy the show. All right, Mr. Ammon Hillman, you are a quite the controversial figure when it comes to religion, classics, ancient texts. You're a linguist. You're a classicist. What is your official title?
Hail Satan, Danny. It's nice to be here, by the way. Thank you so much for
Are
the
you a
invitation.
Satanist?
Am I a Satanist? Oh, God. Those people bother me so much. I can't be a Satanist. I'm sorry.
They bother you.
Uh-huh.
What bothers you? What bothers you about them?
The whole religious side of things. Yeah, no. What am I?
Well, you are a religious scholar, right?
No, I'm a classicist. Religious scholars, no, we eat those for breakfast. Yeah, no, I'm a classicist.
Okay.
And what I do is...
What is a classicist?
It's somebody who is a specialist in the translation of ancient Greek. Some people do Latin too, but that's, Latin was for hut-dwelling Romans, you know what I mean? It's just not to the level that the Greek is. The unique word count alone is off the chart for Greek. It is a superior language that devoured languages in antiquity. It just ate them up, boom, boom. And this is normal in any language over time. Any language over time. Right? Some become strong and they become dominant. Others die out. The Greek was the behemoth. It was the dragon of antiquity. And modern Greek is nothing like it.
How long have you been studying and reading and translating Greek?
For 30 years now. And every classicist knows it's our honor and duty to guard the muse. And to keep those ancient documents within the flow, within time itself. So we're dragons, man. That's what classicists really are. Unfortunately, most classicists today, they're focused on things that are more to build careers and garbage, essentially. So a lot of texts, a lot of these ancient texts that we've got, they aren't translated even. I've got an entire book that I brought to show to you that is from the 1800s. It's Galen. And these things are untranslated. It's all in Greek. I have the physical copies sitting in my bag.
Wow. So what pushed you in the direction to be interested in this stuff? Did you have a religious childhood or a religious upbringing, or what got you into this?
Jesus got me into this. Yeah.
When you were how old?
Oh, God, when I was like 13.
When you were 13?
Yeah,
So you were religious when you were a child?
Oh, yes. I was born again. Love Jesus Christ. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I used to teach at a mission. Are you kidding me? I used to convert people. I used to have mostly drunks. And I don't know, we were like a place for them to go and to sober up. But they had to listen to my crap. Oh, excuse me. They had to listen to my sermon in order to get that meal. Because that's how we spread, brother. Do you understand? I converted souls into mission.
You converted souls to Christianity when you were 13?
No, I started doing that when I was like 17.
When you were 17?
Yeah. I was teaching Sunday school class too, because their Sunday school teachers sucked.
Really?
Yeah.
How does a 17-year-old get to start teaching Sunday school? Did your parents get you into this stuff?
Oh, of course, yeah. Through the family and through some very intelligent teachers like Dr. J. Vernon McGee. Oh, God, beloved Dallas theologian. You know what I mean? Dallas Theological Seminary. I went there for 3 months, and their Greek program was so bad. I went to the president of the university. I said, hey, it's not up to stuff. His name was Walford, John Walford. And I said, your program isn't up to snuff. Your Greek program is terrible, right? So I went on to university to get a PhD and
going back to the early childhood stuff.
Yeah.
When you were in your teens, you said you were teaching Sunday school.
Yeah.
What particularly were you teaching, and was there some point in your life that led you to question the teachings of the Bible and the teachings of the church and everything you knew when you were young?
I got there through Aristotle. So here's what happened. I saw how bad the standards were on the Christian side for ancient Greek. And I said, I've got to follow a track to be able to get there. And it went through the sciences. And I think what happened was when I was 21, I just cracked. I was reading Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
And the pure, unadulterated glory of his reason.
And you're talking about Greek? You're reading Greek?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So how did you learn Greek at 21?
Because I went to a special high school, first of all.
Okay.
Shout out to the people from Special Projects.
Special Projects?
That was his first name. Everybody, you had to test to get into it, right?
Uh-huh.
Everybody that I was around is somehow involved in, military, government, stuff like that. We won the chess championship 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. National chess championship, right? Bunch of nerds, right? Total nerds. So I knew I would be going to learn about Jesus at a seminary someday because that was my bent. I save people,
And you said when you were saving people, you were saving alcoholics, drunks, rather?
They were the easy pickings.
So what did they do? They just came to you? They said, my life is terrible?
No, it's a mission. So they check in for the evening. They got to sit and listen to us preach. Mm-hmm. Then they give them dinner. They're mostly there to get fed,
Right.
Charity, so to speak. But
Right.
I was the one who was saving souls. That was my thing. It was delicious. Have you never saved a soul?
Probably not, no.
No?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you should try. Yeah.
Well, I'll have to learn. You
It's
teach
yummy.
me. Okay, so you're doing this in your early teens, saving souls in a mission. It's called a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you decide in your early 20s you're going to learn Greek at the high school you're at.
No, I started that was my high school. Right after that, I went to the University of Arizona.
Okay.
And started their classics program there. And I went through in 3 years and ate it up and went to Tel Megiddo at the time and did a dig at Tel Megiddo in Israel.
So, okay, so you said you did a classics program at the University of Arizona. When you first went into that program in college, what was your goal? What were you looking for? Anything? What did you want to learn?
Jesus.
You wanted to learn about Jesus.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, all right.
I think so. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this, man. I'm trying to understand your curiosity here. I'm trying to dig deep into the psyche of Ammon Hillman.
Okay, I love it.
Okay, so that's when you learned Greek.
Yes.
Was it hard to learn Greek?
Yeah, and you never stop. You never stop. I'm not kidding you. I can take a text right now, throw it in front of any classicist in the world and have them and say translate it, and they'll be like, yeah, no, nonus. I can do that with nonus right now. Throw it in front of 98% of the classes out there. They'll stumble. The ones who have done nonus, they'll be able to get it.
Why is nonus so hard to translate?
Because he's using an archaic style. He's trying to do something that they were doing 1,000 years previous to him.
Okay.
And he's putting together the longest epic. It's about Dionysus and a bunch of arrow poison using women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Arrow poison.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Hot stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also causes satyriasis. It's a drug. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what satyriasis is?
No,
it's the
what's a
word for
satyriasis?
satyr.
Satyr.
Yeah.
What is satyr?
A satyr is a guy who walks around with an erection constantly. Constant.
How does he have an erection constantly?
Constant, unremitting erection. Yeah, the old Spanish fly in there. Oh, God. Keeps it hard all the time. You can kill a person, they say, after 7 days. You got to stop them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what they said in antiquity, 7 days. I don't know. How'd they find out?
Okay, so going back to your college, you're studying Greek, and then you said, at what point did you go to Israel, and why did you go to Israel?
Yeah, right after my bachelor's, went to Israel and stayed there for a year and worked on the Tel Megiddo excavation.
What is that? For people who don't know, don't know anything about this stuff.
No, that's okay. Why would they? It's the place of Armageddon. So it's a site in Israel, and it has a temple. Our team discovered the temple floor that was there. It's a Canaanite temple floor under everything. And that dates back, the last time I saw, they thought that dated back to about 4,000 BC. So, and I don't use the about 4,000 BC. Okay. So it was a momentous, wondrous excavation. And I'm proud to have been part of it. Yeah.
What kind of stuff did you find?
I found a chicken.
Chicken?
Yeah, I found a chicken because I was digging the old French dump heap. What they found that was so important was the floor of a Canaanite temple where these Canaanite priestesses in 4000 BC, where all the power, where all the authority is there. Yeah, Tel Megiddo. There it is. I'm sorry. I'm distracted.
That's it.
Yeah, Tel Megiddo. And it's a wonderful site. And I tell you, I slept. The most interesting part of the story is I slept in the vineyard of Jezebel.
So what did you learn from the stuff you found at Tel Megiddo?
The earliest occupation was probably by these Canaanite populations.
Which was 4000 BC?
Yeah, they've got a circular dance floor for them to be worshiping whatever divinities it is that they worship. And these are like the Phoenicians and it's all up and down the coast. Jezebel was a Phoenician princess, baby. You know what I mean?
So they had a circular dance floor.
Yeah, right. Is that unimpressive?
That's very impressive. For 4,000 years ago, it's very impressive.
Well, move on then, because when I was in the vineyard of Jezebel, these guys that went nuts, they got up at night and they sat there and they talked and they told me what was going to happen to me.
What did they say was going to happen to you?
On successive nights. They said a troop of demons will assist you to bring the Antichrist. Yeah.
Who said that?
Two guys on two successive nights.
Who were these
guys?
Went
nuts. There were people with us on the excavation. Right? We're working during the day, and in the evenings we're sleeping, and people are waking up in their sleep and talking to me, and then going nuts.
Is that thunder?
Yeah.
This is amazing. We're doing this podcast in the middle of a thunderstorm.
Yeah, we got a storm.
So these guys told you what about the Antichrist?
They said I would be protected by a troop of demons.
A troop of demons?
Yeah, and they said it on successive nights. So like the first guy, Moshe, he went totally nuts, right? He sat up in bed at 2 a.m., started talking to me like a puppet. The next morning, runs off. Boom. The head of the kibbutz where we're staying comes to me. She says, "What's going on?" I said, "Off he goes." I don't know. Right? The next night, I didn't think it was odd. I love Jesus at this point. I didn't think it was odd. But on the next night, the dude that they replaced him with, he did the same thing. He sat up in bed. He gave me the same message.
You'll be protected by
A troop of demons.
a troop of demons.
Yeah.
For what purpose?
To bring the Antichrist.
What did you make of that?
I thought he was nuts the first time he said it. And the second time he said it, I thought, wow, this place is like, what happened? Is there some kind of material in the ground or something out here?
Making these people crazy?
You know what I mean? Making people nuts. The head of the kibbutz came to me and she said, "What's going on?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "What's going on? 2 of your roommates have gone totally nuts." I said, "Hell if I know." Yeah. What would you expect me to say? When they claimed that I was able to levitate through doors at the university, and they had a inquiry as to my state of demon possession.
When was this?
When I worked for St. Mary's University.
So this is much later.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try to stay on track.
Let's stay on track.
Let's try to stay like in wow.
You see what happens?
Are you sure you're not the Antichrist?
There's just a rain cloud that follows him around everywhere.
Yeah. What is the Christ?
What is the Antichrist?
What is the Christ? If you have to know the Antichrist, you have to know the Christ.
Right.
It's a Greek word. For applying a drug to your eyes so that they may be open.
That's what the Christ means in Greek.
Yes, it's from the verb chrio, to be stung by the gadfly.
Huh.
Who's the gadfly?
Who is the gadfly?
Yeah, I don't know. Socrates said he was. It's a thing they had going on. Remember, they have orgies and stuff like that, so you better buckle up, right?
But what does that have to do with the gadfly? I mean, you think...
No, oestrus, to be stung.
Oh.
It's a state of mania. They call it in Greek, oestromania.
Okay.
To be in an altered state.
Right. Okay. Anyways, let's go back to you're in Israel, right? And you're doing this excavation. You're finding all this stuff. These crazy people come up to you telling you that you're protected by a troop of demons.
Yeah.
How long did you stay there? And then what did you do after that?
A year and a month.
Okay.
And then I decided, okay, I've maxed out what's my interest here. And came back and enrolled in another program, which ended up, master's program, ended up sending me to a lab where I cut brains.
Cut brains?
Yeah.
Okay. What were you cutting brains for?
To identify neuropeptides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. On the science.
This is your study in bacteriology?
No, it hadn't gone to the bac-T, but it's what led to the bac-T. I wanted to bolster my science education. So I did a lot of
neuropeptides. What's a neuropeptide?
Yeah, it's a peptide that is active in the brain as part of a signaling system. So we talk about communication between the hypothalamus and the pituitary and how puberty is regulated. That was a big one. We were looking for the peptide that brings on premature puberty.
Do you hear that?
That's those are souls swirling around outside.
Dude, that's loud.
Yeah.
Is that rain?
Yeah. Rain or wind blowing the rain.
God. So the neuropeptides that were responsible for puberty?
Yeah, the onset of puberty.
What made you so interested in that?
They had a grant for it. It wasn't mine. They had a grant.
You just got thrown into it?
It's for premature, it's for people who have early onset puberty.
Okay. Is there a problem with that?
Hell yeah, there's a problem with that.
What's the problem?
All that stuff is timed with growth. So if your
What causes it?
peptides go astray in the brain,
But
Yeah.
what makes the peptides go astray? Is there some sort of external influences?
we didn't know at the time what it was. That's what I was doing. This is where I am in the experiment. You know, it's not an experiment. It's just an investigation. But you're tagging. You take an antibody conjugated substance, and it's either something that fluoresces or it's a dye of some sort.
Right.
And you localize where these peptides are in the brains of these things that you sacrificed. Yeah,
Animals?
We used to drill holes in animals' heads and then put in a little catheter, a little tube, and then you can insert a substance, anything you want. Anything you could insert orange juice if you wanted, but we would insert substances and then take another collector and see what the hypothalamus did. And it was a beautiful finding. Because they were mapping. At the time, people were mapping how the brain works. And this is how they were figuring out what the hypothalamus does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was proud to be a part of it. It was a good education.
How long did you do that stuff? How long did you do those studies?
A couple of years.
A couple of years.
Yeah,
Okay.
I taught endocrinology too.
Oh, did you really?
Well, everybody in the grad program had to.
You taught endocrinology.
Yeah, yeah. I did the brain part of it. So, and you had to, graduate students had to.
Like the hypothalamus, and the pituitary, and
The third ventricle, man, you know what that is?
what's the third ventricle?
It's an open space in the middle of your head.
Really?
And it's filled with a fluid. It's the water of life.
The water of life.
Yeah, and this fluid has all
Did people
this...
in ancient times try to drink that water of life from people's heads?
You know they did. Do you want to see the text?
I'm sure the text can verify this.
Baby brains, man.
Baby brains.
Yeah. No, they used to bleed them too. Yeah.
So what is this, Steve? What are we looking at?
This is the third ventricle.
Beautiful.
Okay. The third ventricle. Is it just, does it say it's just liquid in there or what?
Yeah, it's a pristine pool. It's beyond...
What is the purpose of it? What is it? What is the function?
carry the messengers.
That's the scientific description of what it does.
Yeah, actually it is. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Because it's communicating with all the tissue that it's overlapping. It's communicating.
Okay.
And that little special area of the brain,
Yeah.
there's the three ventricles,
Right.
is like pristine. That has to be the purest, totally beyond the barrier for any sort of infection, right? If you've got an infection there, you're dead.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, lots of brains. I cut up lots of brains.
So, at what point in your life did you start writing this infamous dissertation that got suppressed by the heads of the department in classics when you started writing about the use of drugs in antiquity?
That's from that exact point.
Okay.
I picked up Professor Romer came to me.
Professor Romer.
Yeah.
This is
Frank
University of
Romer.
Wisconsin?
Yeah, at the time he was at University of Wisconsin. I think he went out somewhere in California. But Frank Romer, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I know you're." When I was on the science side, he said, I already had him in classics, right? So he knew what my interests were, and he said, "Here, we have a whole bunch of documents that nobody's ever translated from Greek. Have at it." It was like the greatest.
Where do you find
gift.
those documents?
Everywhere they've been for the last 2,000 years.
Where?
Just sitting there
Where, on his desk?
in libraries.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nobody reads them. Classicists don't do it. You know why?
Why?
Because they're hard.
They're hard.
Because these Greeks are smart. They're smart. And these how many classicists do you think know pharmacology? Yeah.
I have no idea. Probably not many.
Zero. Yeah. They don't do the medical stuff. It's a shame. It's a shame. So
Well, that's just like any field, right? A lot of people who are experts in certain fields or certain disciplines, they don't have a wide variety of skills or disciplines as well. They're typically just in one lane. You got to talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or you got to be a jack of all trades.
Interdisciplinary.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Love that. You keep one foot on either side of the fence. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to work with the country's best medical historian.
What's his name again?
John Scarborough.
John Scarborough.
Yeah, and he had a knowledge of the medical side as well.
Okay.
But he was also a great Byzantine. He did a ton of the Byzantine sources. He was one of the translators of the Greek magical papyri. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Can you explain what the magical papyri is for people who don't know? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Mudwater. Mudwater is a coffee alternative containing 4 adaptogenic mushrooms. With only a fraction of the caffeine as a cup of coffee, you get energy without the jitters or the crash of coffee. And each ingredient was added for a purpose. Cacao and chai for a hint of caffeine and hot chocolate-like flavor, lion's mane to support focus, cordyceps to help support physical performance, and both chaga and reishi to support your immune system. What I really love about Mudwater is that it tastes great, and they took their time to find all the perfect ingredients to develop a product that helps you feel better every single day. Mudwater donates monthly to psychedelic research and treatments as they believe the country is in a mental health epidemic and sees psychedelics as useful tools for individuals with depression, PTSD, anxiety, and other mental health experiences. So get 15% off and a free frother by using my link below, mudwater.com/Danny, and use the code Danny at checkout to get 15% off. That's mudwtr.com/Danny and use the promo code Danny at checkout to get 15% off. It's linked below. Now back to the show.
Yeah, it's a collection of Greek works. It's all about some of the dirtiest cult magic stuff you've ever seen. People who say they know Gnosticism, they haven't read this thing in Greek. They don't know what they're talking about. This is the one where we get all the body fluids that are being used for the sake of medicine.
Okay.
And
it's in this papyri.
Yeah.
And who knows?
One source.
All right, we'll get into this more later. But let's go back to.
So I was studying with him.
Studying and developing your. He gives you these papers, these texts to translate.
Yes.
And this is when you first discovered the use of drugs, or the idea of drugs being ubiquitous in antiquity.
Yeah, I was studying ancient pharmacology. That was what my area was. That's what I was forging.
Okay. And you already knew about Galen, right? You'd already been studying Galen.
Yeah, I know. And I had been to a conference in England, and the London Times said, "Wow, this guy's work is the last wild frontier of classics." You know, and they're right, because nobody does this stuff. Mm-hmm. Nobody.
For people, also to give some more context to people who are listening, who is Galen? Can you explain who Galen was?
Yeah, Galen is a 2nd century physician he works for Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, and he's probably one of the greatest intellects of Western civilization. Definitely. He wrote thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, and probably 10% of it has been translated, if 10%.
Wow.
And nobody goes near the pharmaceutical stuff. Now, in 2013, I saw for the first time a dissertation was written in which the person translated Galen's theriac to Paiso.
What's a theriac?
A theriac is a multi-drug component that's used to balance a poison or death bringer, they call them.
To balance a poison or death bringer. So like an antidote?
Yeah, exactly an antidote. But they called it a galenic reaction, unrelated to the reason of Galen.
Oh, okay.
A galenic reaction, that's the reaction. That's to bring the balance of the one that can kill you with the one that can keep you alive bring those together. That's theriac, baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's the point of that?
To die and to be born again.
Die and to be born again. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want?
How much Galen have you read?
Considerable. Yeah, considerable.
How many? Give me an idea. Like how many pages?
Oh God, thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah.
And he's written how much?
22 volumes at 1,000 each, so somewhere around 22,000 pages.
And where does all this literature exist? Like, where is it being held?
It's held currently in a book that's sitting out in my.
You have all of it.
Yeah, I got it from Johns Hopkins.
Wow.
Yeah, because Professor Scarborough was in with all the book traders, right? And they were like, "Oh shit, Galen has become available."
Okay.
Can I run out and get Galen? And
Yeah, go grab it.
Show you.
Go grab it.
He's got an original Galen book.
Here he comes with the original.
1840s.
This is from 1840,
Yeah, what's the date say on it?
1827.
There you go. Look, I was not
Galen
even
Opera,
close.
Omnia, Kuhn, 1827.
Yeah, I was off a few years.
So
open it up and you'll see it's basically, Danny, it's a medical text for physicians in in the early 1800s. Wow. Right? What are they studying? They're studying Galen. You asked me who Galen was? Guess what? He's the dude who dominated medicine from the 2nd century when he lived until that book that you're holding. Right? This is the last set.
you're talking the 2nd century BC, right?
Yeah. No. Anno Domini.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. This is his physician. By the way, he says in here that Marcus Aurelius is a total dopehead.
What language is this?
Greek on the top, Latin on the bottom. And the Latin translation is garbage. Right?
Wow, man, this is wild.
Yeah. Now, what you're holding there is volume 14 of a 22-volume set from Johns Hopkins. As you can see, those bastards put their mark all over it. By the way, isn't that beautiful paper?
Look at this, everybody.
That's centuries old. Centuries. Think about it. Look at that. Right? Oh, it's gorgeous. It's a work of art. It's a work
really
of art.
is.
But
How many pages is this? 800 pages.
800 pages. Now think about it's volume 14, which is
That's one of 14 books.
Yeah, it's one of 22, but it is 14, and 14 is all about the pharmacology of the antidotes. And nobody looks into that stuff. And Galen says Marcus Aurelius is a total dopehead. He's on way too much.
What was he on specifically?
The theriac. It's a combination of plants and animal products that is meant to balance a cult ritual drug called the Black Death.
The cult ritual drug that was called the Black Death.
Yeah. This is from Nero's library. Right?
Okay.
Nero has his arch physician get this formula from the East for the theriac. The theriac is meant to balance the cup of Lady Babylon.
Okay. Let's go back to. I feel like we're starting to go down a rabbit hole where it's going to be hard for us to get out of.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we explain this story in a linear fashion so people can follow it and don't get lost. You're studying Galen, right? And you're working on your dissertation. And what happens next?
Oh, so for my dissertation, I did it on Roman pharmacy.
Okay, right.
And
Roman pharmacy.
Roman pharmacy.
Okay.
Nobody's written a work on Roman pharmacy, and I had already done a translation and commentary for a master's thesis. That's usually what they give to doctoral students. And I had done one for a master's thesis, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I'm going to write a text that's just kind of a general Roman pharmacy text so that people can learn about drugs in the ancient world. And the committee told me, take out the chapter on recreational drugs or we're not going to give you the degree. And
you only had one chapter that was about recreational drugs?
Yeah, the rest were all medicinal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But didn't you say that they didn't distinguish between recreational and medicinal? Is that right?
No, that's exactly right. We were distinguishing.
We do it now, but they didn't back then.
No, back then. Things that you and I would call recreational, they didn't consider recreational. They considered medicinal. Right? So, curing depression is medicinal process.
How long did you spend on this dissertation?
Oh, couple of years.
Couple of years.
Yeah.
And then, so there was one specific moment, a date where you had to go in to, I guess, receive your judging on it or get graded on it or get a feedback on it. I have no idea how this process works. So you have to walk me through it.
Yeah. So you write your dissertation and you take it before your defense.
Before your defense. Okay.
Yeah, and your committee there is a group of professors, and usually there's one from outside the department, just so the university stays kind of impartial. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it's a committee of professors. Anyway, you present your dissertation to them, and then they either tell you you're terrible.
They tell you you're terrible.
Yeah. Or they pass you and you get to walk out and say, I have a doctoral degree. So they told me at the end, they're supposed to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, but they didn't give me anything. And I was standing there looking around like, what? Right? And I met with the head of the department and was told, you have to take out the chapter on recreational drugs. And you have to scrub any references to recreational drugs in the rest of the work. And you're fine. Yeah.
What was your response?
She said the Romans just wouldn't do such a thing. This is the head of the department. And by that time I had seen so much stuff that the Romans were doing. I was like, oh my God, I understand what's going on. They're building a ceiling that we can't get beyond, that doesn't exist. We should be able to go right through that thing. With these texts, we can do that. Anyhow, so I took the material and I sent it to Macmillan. I just scrubbed it, and then I sent it to Macmillan. And they accepted it. Thomas Dunn accepted it. And it was fantastic.
Macmillan is what?
It was St. Martin's Press.
Publishing company.
Yeah, it used to be publishing company, St. Martin's Press. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what became the book, the famous book that you created, The Chemical Muse.
Correct.
And once you decided to scrub the chapter from your dissertation and any sort of reference to drugs whatsoever, and then they accepted it and gave you your PhD.
Any references to recreational drugs?
Recreational,
because there are a whole bunch of drugs all over it, right? For healing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, drugs that you use in anesthesia.
Right.
What did they use?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
What was the response after your book, The Chemical Muse, was published?
The Bryn Mawr Classical Review came out, which is the big reviewer. And a European professor, French, came out and said, this book is dangerous. He said it shouldn't be read at any university, anytime, ever. And he was like,
what year are we talking?
Oh, this was 2008.
Wow.
2008.
Okay.
And so it was roundly ignored, put into the guy said, this guy obviously has a drug agenda. I was like, no, let's just talk about the drugs, because they don't read these texts. Now, that same journalist has gone and talked to the aforementioned Bryn Mawr Classical Reviewist. And now they're writing a book, and this is about shamanism, all the same stuff, all the same material. It's because they didn't know it.
Mm-hmm. And you were the first one to sort of uncover this stuff and make it known.
I was not the first. I would say I was the one who took it and took the big picture of it. I was the first one to bring the science side.
Who was the first one?
Over Carl Rock.
Carl Rock.
Yeah, no, because he said they're using something in the Eleusinian Mysteries, right? He was already looking at, he didn't have any problem with the concept that he coined, entheogens, right? These are substances that are in theos that bring that divine being into you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole class of drugs they were using.
Have you ever had any conversations about Carl Ruck with the stuff that you discovered and this, the stuff you talk about in The Chemical Muse?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure. Once The Chemical Muse was published, they sent it to Dr. Ruck for
a review,
consideration, because he's the only one who had been on the list of people who had talked about drugs, and he got shamed. He got completely shamed.
Well, look, it seems like this idea and the idea of drugs being used back then is becoming more and more accepted. I mean, you got people like Brian Mararescu and Graham Hancock. I think Brian's new book's his latest book is The Immortality Key, where he talks about the mystery cults of Eleusis and the ergot.
Yeah. I know Brian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
Professor Ruck sent him to me to get the medical stuff.
So you guys spoke about when he was working on his book?
Yeah, we had a couple of interviews before when he came up with the idea. Gave him a couple of interviews about what the sources are and what the extent of the stuff is. He said, "Do you mind if I mention you and Joe Rogan?" And I said, yes, go ahead and do that. But if you do, you have to mention that Jesus Christ was arrested in a public park with a boy at 4 a.m. screaming, "I'm not a trafficker."
You made sure you told him he needed to say that.
He had to say that exact phrase. And so...
So he didn't.
So he chose. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Look, I mean... It was really interesting to me reading your book, and I was really gripped by what you've sort of uncovered, which it makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. That life back then, life in antiquity was fucking terrible, and people didn't die from heart disease and from diabetes and from old age like they do today. They died from hand-to-hand combat and plagues and famine.
Yeah.
And to live back then was a miserable existence for the most part. Infant mortality was like 50%.
Yeah.
And they needed these drugs just to get through the day. And the warriors fighting these wars, they needed to take these drugs to suffer these insurmountable wounds they would have to suffer in battle. Can you talk a little bit to that and to like some of the details that you uncover in your book about what life was like and how hard it was and the amount of death and plague and famine and how these drugs were used to curb these sort of ailments?
Yeah. The best way is to resurrect the soul of Hippocrates and to look at the works that he wrote called The Epidemics, in which he describes all the diseases that people are getting, what they're suffering from, all the ailments. Oh my God, you know what herpes does when it goes untreated?
No.
Oh, Hippocrates has descriptions of it. They call it herpes because their word herpeton is their word for a snake or something that slithers, something that crawls. Because that's what herpes does when it goes untreated. It crawls all over you. It rots you.
Thank God I don't know about that.
You get descriptions of this kind of stuff, and you see life on a different, at a different level. 1/3 of women were having death as a side effect of birth.
1/3 of women were dying from childbirth.
Yeah. The problems are bleeding.
Right.
They're constantly trying to control bleeding and whatnot. Yeah, with drugs. Oh, miserable. And, about 1/3 of the population of the youth from in the late teens, that's getting eaten off. They become soldiers, and a certain number of those get sacrificed. Right? It's not a cheapness. They don't have there isn't a sense of futility. It's looked at as a sacrifice.
And what point in history are we talking about?
Oh, God, as far back as the Bronze Age, all the way down to about Byzantine.
The Bronze Age is what, older than the 5th century?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. In the best time, the Bronze Age, it was a late Bronze Age, around 1200 to 1100.
1200 to 1100.
Yeah, that's
where some of these oldest texts that you've read come from.
Yeah, the Mycenaean Linear B stuff comes from like 1600 BC, which is... That's spectacular. They've got Dionysus and all that stuff. I worked with Emmett Bennett, who was a Navy cryptographer who studied, who cracked Linear B. And in it we have the name Dionysos. He's the son of Zeus, the thunderer. And... it was a gorgeous, gorgeous world to be able to follow that. But that's where the Greek can take you. Sign up for courses now.
Well, let me ask you this. How, and this is sort of like broad strokes questions.
Yeah.
How did your development of your understanding of these ancient texts and reading this ancient Greek and even the Hebrew, everything that you've read, how did that change your perspective on religion and Christianity and Catholicism? You were raised, what, Christian or Catholic?
I love Jesus, man. I was, I don't know.
What was your family?
Baptist.
Baptist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you start to understand the history and the texts, how did this change your worldview of religion? And what sort of like misconceptions did you have that were shattered by this understanding?
I had a long-term relationship with a muse. So the whole time that I'm developing this educationally, oh, look, I was just going to bring the Antichrist.
Oh, it's happening, guys.
The Antichrist is coming, everybody. Tornado warning. Don't bring him yet.
Okay.
Hold him off.
Okay.
Hold off Zeus. These texts that you're reading and that you're translating, are these the original sources of religion? Of Christianity and Catholicism and baptism and all this stuff? Is this like the originals?
Yeah, this is the language that held that all of those texts. So the New Testament's all written in ancient Greek, right? What you call the Old Testament, and I'm going to shock people with this one. What you call the Old Testament, which people say is written in Hebrew, right? Which is not a language that I work with. I had to take a little bit of modern Hebrew when I was there, just because it was part of the, education. And, but the text that you think is written in Hebrew is not. It's a Greek text that's written in the 3rd century. It's a Hellenistic text called, that you call the Torah or the Old Testament. That is not an original Hebrew text. Now, how can I say that? What we have is the Septuagint that I'm talking about. It's the Greek Old Testament. Do you understand Greek Old Testament?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's the oldest form that we've got.
Okay.
Okay. The whole big deal about the Dead Sea Scrolls was they said, we finally have some Hebrew, because none of it survives, right? Hebrew is only an 8,000 word, ancient Hebrew, 8,000 word, unique word count language.
Okay.
Which puts it in the realm of something you could expend by the end of your breakfast. 8,000 words. That's not a lot.
Okay. And the Dead Sea Scrolls were all in Hebrew?
The Dead Sea Scrolls were fragments in Hebrew and fragments in Greek, and everybody assumed, this is the original in Hebrew, right? Because now we're following church history. You and I live in a time in the time stream. We live at a time when we think that there was an original Hebrew text of the Old Testament, but there wasn't. It doesn't exist. Right? And to show people the Greek, no, what's the proof? What's the proof? The proof is when you read the Septuagint, that is the Greek Old Testament. Does not read as a translation. It reads as an original. It uses Greek idiom. It's like a fingerprint on the language, and it's got Greek.
How can you tell it reads
Greek
as-
fingerprints?
How do you discern the difference, whether it be an original or a translation?
Oh, you can tell. It's easy to tell because colloquialisms don't translate, right? And so it's like tagging it. So you're testing this language to see to see what its age is.
Okay.
So you tag it with certain things, and one of them is colloquialisms, right? The other one is technical vocabulary. You cannot translate from a higher technical degree to you can't translate from a median technical degree to a high technical degree.
Okay.
You can go down the slope. You can take something that's not technical, right? And make it more technical, right? You can force that. But you can't drift upstream.
Right.
So if the original is going to have the highest degree of technicality.
Yes. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were not the highest degree of technical writing. They were lower. They were lower than the Greek. What was the word? The book you're talking about.
They're Hebrew back translations because at the time, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're Hebrew back translations. So they took the Greek.
Of what specifically?
They took the Greek and they said, how do we translate this into Greek?
Okay.
That's why you lose all the technical terms because they didn't have them in their language.
And what I'm asking is what? God, that's crazy. This is the first podcast I can remember where the lightning has been this crazy, this loud. So the Dead Sea Scrolls came from where? What were the sources of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
So those caves in Qumran, right? They've dated these things to probably, I've heard as early as 1st BC, but all the way up to 2nd Anno Domini. So somewhere in that range, somebody is taking the Greek text that we know is already established because people are quoting it. Right, we know, for example, they had the Book of Enoch in Greek because people are quoting it in Greek. So that's how you can like track your library. Where's your library at the time? Right, that's how you track it. By the way,
have you read the Book of Enoch?
Yeah, I read the Giza fragments of it. I can say that much.
What do you think about all these people talking about Anunnaki aliens flying around and building pyramids back in the day?
I think it's silly.
You do? Damn it! You know how many podcasts we've done with people who claim that they're experts on the Anunnaki?
Yeah, seems to be a big area, but they were drug users, bro. What can you expect? That's what they taught in the Giza text. It says they taught the women the art of drugs.
So these weren't aliens; they were just drug users. They were just drug addicts.
They were giants, bro.
They were giants.
Yeah.
Like real giants.
Gigantos. That's
Steve, are you crunching?
Oh, you can hear that.
Oh my God!
No, I liked it.
It's this is the ASMR podcast. There's stimulus everywhere.
They taught them the drug craft. That's what the text says. And you don't understand, man. They've got Medusae at the time. You say,
wait. Go back to giants.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, giants?
That's the Greek word, gigantos.
Giants meaning physically they were huge people?
No.
Okay.
Right? No. They had a superior knowledge of the drugs, and they had a group of women who were called the Medusae. And the Medusae could hit you with a drug on an arrow and paralyze you. And then they would take you and do things to you. And that's how a group of these women functioned. That's how they hunted. They hunted men. You can imagine the society.
Of women that hunted men.
Yeah, you have to kill 3 men in order to get married.
Huh.
Yeah. And they don't really marry you. They just farm men.
And when is this? What time period? What is this?
This is Bronze Age, late Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
Mm-hmm. It's like 1200, the peak at 1200, say BC.
1200.
This is when the great queen Medea is around. Yeah. And
So okay. Well, this is great. I'm loving this. But back to my original question: how fundamentally, how did your understanding and learning all of this ancient Greek change your understanding of how religion is preached today and the story of the Bible?
it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. What they teach now and do now is not even a hair's breadth of semblance to what they did originally. Yeah, you don't understand. A mystery is not a word that means a question or something you don't know, right? The mystery is the performance that brings you through death back into life. And once you've been initiated into that environment, you're given keys, things to open up, a way to decode what's being said so that you understand what's at the higher level. Now, if you're like Jesus, you do that with 12 children. People don't realize that. The apostles are just children.
Pump the brakes. We'll get there.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. Okay.
We're going to get there. Don't worry.
Okay.
This, that's so loud.
This is the best day of my life.
Is it really?
Thank you for allowing me to
I was
come
going to
here.
say, you've had a terrible life if this is the best day. In Greece, in Athens, we're talking the Iron Age or the Bronze Age, when they started to develop these mystery cults of Eleusis. What time was this?
Yeah, this is late Bronze Age. Late Bronze Age.
And
Couple of generations before the Trojan War.
a couple of generations before the Trojan War. And this is when they were experimenting with these drugs that would these psychotropic drugs like ergot and other things.
Yeah.
What were some of the other drugs they were using back then?
They were using the ones that make you crazy. So there's several classes, and one of them are the death bringers. That's one we talked about.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Verso. Have you ever tried fasting or intermittent fasting? If so, you may be aware of the sizzling energy and mental clarity that you get if you do it long enough. The scientific data validating the health benefits from fasting for weight loss is overwhelming. But what doesn't get talked about enough is the longevity benefits you get from fasting. When you fast, your body turns on all its defense mechanisms to help your body hunker down to fight off illness and disease. But the problem is it takes 3 days of starving yourself to activate this process. Scientists like David Sinclair have recently discovered molecules to help your body turn on this process without having to fast. If you've ever heard this podcast before, you've heard me talk about Verso many times, and I've had world-renowned nutritional scientists like Dominic D'Agostino on the show, who is the guy who actually introduced me to Verso, and I've been taking it every day for the last 3 years. Cell Being is always the first thing I take in the morning after dragging my carcass into the kitchen, which wakes me up and gives me energy. I even use it for pre-workout. And Clean Being is the product I use every night before bed. After taking Clean Being for some time now, I have actually noticed a huge improvement in not only my hormone regulation, but my vision has improved. I know it sounds insane, but this stuff actually can improve your vision. My lipid regulation has gotten better. And another huge thing is all of a sudden, I don't get affected by all the pollen in the air. I don't have any of these reactions. And Clean Being has actually been scientifically proven to alleviate these things. Other clinical trials have proven healthier skin, less inflammation, healthier hair, lipid regulation, enhanced cognitive function, and improved metabolism. On top of that, Verso always publishes third-party testing on each batch produced to guarantee you're getting exactly what you pay for. So if you want to check out Verso and support this podcast at the same time, go to buy.ver.so/Danny and use the coupon code Danny at checkout for 15% off your first order. Again, that's buy.ver.so/DANNY and use the coupon code Danny for 50% off your first order. It's linked below. Now back to the show.
Now there's the ones that make you crazy. And
Permanently?
no, temporarily. Okay. And they would have people cured, quote unquote cured, because they've got antidotes. We even have stories about people going out and he's like, oh, my daughters, they went off on their cult thing and they're still not coming down. What do we do? And he has to go whip them up an antidote
Right.
for them to stop being in this state of mania. And it's things like hyoscyamine, scopolamine, and atropine, containing huoskuamos is the Greek word, and it's these plants that contain these substances that, you know, they found them in hair, painted on in hair because they're offerings.
And what was the what did they gain by taking these drugs, and what sort of what did they learn? What sort of enlightenment did they achieve? And what was the ends to the use of these drugs for them?
Yeah. We have instead of me making something up, you could read the Mithras liturgy in the Greek magical papyri, where it talks about what you'll see and how you should interact and what you have to do.
Oh, they had like a protocol.
Yeah. It's like a manual.
Wow.
Yeah. And you got to have the right things to bring with you, because you got to make the drugs, right? You get there, and first of all, you're going to be fasting for a certain number of days. Mm-hmm. And they put you through these repetitious songs, right? And we have these in the PGM, where you're setting the images in your head. Remember, this is idolatry. Eidolon is the word for image, right? Mm-hmm. Image. And there's, you know, so when we're on our snake venom, and you've got a concoction and they're using tons of snake stuff. I got an entire author for you. Watch this. Philuminous is his name. Philuminous with a PH on the front. Yeah. He is a physician somewhere before the 4th century, because they start quoting him in the 4th. Mm-hmm. And he's a physician who talks about the venoms. I've got a couple of slides of him. He talks about the venoms that are used. Some great stuff, by the way. The
snake venoms were used as mind-altering drugs, or they were used as antidotes?
They were used as medicines.
Medicines.
Right. The Medusa really exist, right? They're women. They're a group of women. These are Scythian tribes, by the way. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? Tribes that are, they were a horse culture, mobile, mm-hmm. and they ravaged people. That's how they, got what they needed.
And the Medusa were the ones that you said they had to kill a certain amount of men before they could get married?
It's the same tribes that are producing that specific group of women. Mm. They have this cult thing where they apply the medicine to their hair. Mm. They wear it in their hair, and they use arrows. And that poison can petrify you. And they'll drag you off, and they'll do things to you.
Like what, eat your brain?
No, sexy stuff. They'll either mate or kill you.
Well,
Yeah. It's a shame to have to end up a relationship.
That's weird that back then you would have to poison a man to have sex with him, right? Like, wouldn't a guy just want to have sex with some chick?
These are people being raided. Imagine being raided.
I mean, it's hard to rape a man if you're a woman, right?
So you got to give them drugs to make them hard when you're raping them, because you're probably going to kill them too.
What effects did drug use have on the philosophy of Western society and the democratic forms of governance?
Yeah, so it's a part of the fabric of pushing society toward inspiration, looking for sources of inspiration. All the earliest Greek temples are temples of the muses. So that written word connection is very, very important. And magic, people want to know, what is magic, right? Classically. And classically, it's that control of logos. It's a control. And people think logos, that's a Greek word, right? Oh, then the seminarians get all excited, you know what I mean? And they don't really know it, because seminarians don't read classical texts. The logos is that reason, that reckoning.
Okay.
So that's what, to me, that's what I studied so carefully. Mm. That's why classicists study ancient Greek. Mm. Yeah, they do.
Who is Solon?
Solon, he's a reformer. He's a rich reformer who basically turns and gives power back to the people. He was advised by oh, this guy on crack, he carried it around in the hoof of something. And it was a plant they said he ground up and snorted all the time. He advised Solon. And Solon's reforms ultimately become what you and I know as democracy. Yeah.
What is the proper definition of democracy in antiquity compared to our democracy today?
Yeah, it's the rule of the people if you want. It's the rule of the people. The demos is just the neighborhood. You know, Athens is divided up into demes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The hood. You get a neighborhood speak. That's what democracy is. It's a neighborhood speak. And it's direct representation, too. And they've got all sorts of reforms like, look, you cannot take any money while you are a... you know, part of the boule, part of the council. You can't take any money, and you have to have terms and everything. And I it's believe what inspired Jefferson.
Part of your book says that there was 300,000 people in Athens, right? Is that and then 10% of them were part of these councils?
That sounds right.
There was like 30,000 of them were part of these councils that made the rules and made the laws and
they have a couple of assemblies, the boule and the ecclesia, which becomes our word for church.
Well, I loved the way that your book described the differences between our democratic republic that we have in America compared to their version of democracy. And you had all these people that would have to debate all these ideas and rules and laws and punishment for crimes. And I think you said that people only were able to do this for 1 year at a time. They had like 1 year terms or whatever.
It was different at different times, but...
Right, right. And what we have now is so far away from that. Very, very far away from that.
Yeah. Well, we don't have juries with 300 people either. Can you imagine that? Just big crowd of people from the polis doing the city thing, right? They're exercising their politeia. Mm-hmm. That's where we get our word politics, right? It's the functioning of the city.
And they were vehemently against people who could gain any sort of benefit in this system or make any sort of money or any sort of economic gain from this system to corrupt it. Like it was like their version of democracy was essentially to protect humanity from itself.
Yeah, exactly. It put the brakes. It was the ultimate check and balance. Definitely. And it's what inspired our democracy, or the thing we call democracy. Yeah.
But our democracy is so much different. I mean, it's if you look at all the people that are in the government and have been in the government making decisions and making millions of dollars for so long, it is run by tyrants.
Yes. That's how you know, the Greeks said. They said, whoever is profiting, watch who's profiting, and you cannot have the running of the state with somebody profiting from it, because when you do, it becomes corrupt. They knew that. You have to keep that government sacred. You have to keep it sacred.
Right.
Yeah.
And Solon was one of the originals responsible for the creation of democracy.
Yeah, well, yeah, things that led to ultimately what you and I would say, voila, democracy.
And how long did this last?
You could argue that this is a process that doesn't start and end, but it's a process that cycles throughout time. And the deity, this is where it gets cool. The deity that we put on the hill is that warrior girl. Yeah, we put a warrior girl on the hill, and you know what she does? She nourishes the Serpent King. Isn't that funny? She gives him her hyma.
What does this mean?
Her blood. Drink my blood. Yeah, they're using blood as a medicinal. Yeah, the Virgin Queen She's the one who raises that serpent king. Yeah, no, they've got him. You can go to Athens today, go to the top of look for the Erechtheum on the top of the place and be like, where is he? Where's the serpent king? He's there.
Who is the serpent king? Stephen, can you find this guy?
Look for Erechthonius. Right.
Erechthonius?
Yeah.
Erechthonius.
He's from the ground, baby. Chthon. When Jesus is on the cross and he's like, I am thirsty. Sabachthon.
All right.
That's what Jesus said when he was on the cross?
Yeah.
Is this in the Bible?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Why would I make this up?
Well, I'm not saying you're making it up. I'm just trying to distinguish the difference between what's in the Bible and what's in the text. And I assume that they're drastically different, right?
No, I will give you the hardcore evidence.
What is the difference?
It's just the text. I'm just going to bring you a Greek text, and this is from the biblical Greek text.
My question is, what is how big of a gap is there between the original texts and the Bible people read today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are the texts that are ultimately assembled into what you call the Bible.
Right.
Those are the same thing, right? This is the
so
Greek.
there's only some pieces, like there's a huge load of ancient Greek texts, and only certain pieces are cherry picked for the Bible.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. What's the common thread that's uniting all of these things together? It's the cults, man, and the operation of the cults. They're driving the literature at the time. Yeah, they've got a hostage and they're bringing it in. And you can get that from the read. All you got to do is bring up those cults and their activities. The stuff the early Christians were doing, they're collecting blood. And this is from their own insiders who are telling us this. Eustathius tells us this. And he says, oh my God, he says, look what they're doing in these ceremonies. And he goes on to describe it, and I've described it in detail. But they collect the blood.
Who is this guy?
Fetal blood.
Who's Erechthonius?
Oh, this king of this serpent king.
Can you pull up a description of him, Steve? I need Wikipedia's description to give me the truth, so I know how to keep Ammon in check.
Erechthonius in Greek mythology. King Erechthonius was a legendary early ruler of ancient Athens. According to some myths, he was born of the soul.
Autochthonous. Yeah. Exactly. And what happens is Hephaestus comes along and he's like, wow, look at the beauty of what we've made.
He was adopted and raised by Athena.
With this virgin Athena. Her name is Athana.
Okay.
In Dorian.
So how did we get, so explain to people listening how we got to Erechthonius from Solon creating democracy.
It's that line. It's the drug-using mystery that drives everything. Cicero says his life was begun again. He was reborn. What happened? He went to the great resurrection.
So these guys were taking drugs and having some great transcendental experience, right? And they were similar to people when they take crazy psychedelic trips today, right? They call it the ego death. They do ayahuasca ceremonies. This is what's happening to people back then. Is that what you're kind of describing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a death to life. I think it's a death to life experience. It's a rebirth, or what they described anyway as a rebirth. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they put the drug concoction is incredible. We have it in Nero's library. We have it. We have the exact concoction that they used.
Has anybody ever tried to recreate it?
I've tried to get people to do so.
Have you asked Hamilton to try to recreate it?
He said, give me the formula. So I did. Mm-hmm. And he's got it. Could he? It's got a lot of stuff in it that I don't know if, he could actually produce.
Right.
It's got like 7 snake venoms.
7 different snake venoms.
Yeah, you can put it up your butt.
Oh my God.
Is that how they typically did it back in the day?
Chronic.
Like a suppository?
Yeah, we've got a description of a guy who, his priestess, she's spanking him with some stinging nettles, right, on his genitalia, and she's inserting that into his ass. It's a rectal Drug Administration. And we have a text that describes it. It's called a satiricon. Satyrion was the word they used in Latin. It's from Greek, borrowed from Greek. That is the drug that causes you to have priapism. Right?
What is priapism?
Priapism is constant erection.
Okay. And this is what the Medusa use on their victims?
Too late? Is it too late for that? Or too early? Can we talk about that now?
It's probably it's still too early. Yeah, we've still got more stuff to cover.
Okay, stay tuned.
Yeah, we're gonna go really deep into all of the really crazy stuff here. In a little bit, we're gonna cut off and go to Patreon. But I want to lay a solid foundation for your work and your research before we go there. So back to ancient Greece, democracy is formed by Solon, and Aristotle and Plato. Where do they come into the picture?
There are a couple of smarties. Yeah.
And who else was there? Pythagoras?
Yeah, he's a little bit earlier, and he's founding. He's the one who said, by the way, they came to him and asked him they were going to send out a colony, and the oracle had given the go-ahead. And you have to understand, this is coming from late Bronze Age governmental tech, where you have oracles that rule, that tell you who can go to war with who, which tyrant needs to be executed. Right? If you send an embassy out and they ask the oracle and she says, execute him. Right? What about this leader we got? And she's, execute him. That's it. He's dead.
What is so special about this oracle?
They start with these drugs. They use the drugs that those Scythian tribes are using up on the Black Sea. And they're causing this transformation that they describe as adamantine freedom. So freedom that is not corruptible. Right? It's a form of government. That's why they call them the Medusae, from Medwa. It's an old Mycenaean concept. Yeah. Anywho.
We were talking briefly earlier about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And you said the Dead Sea Scrolls part of them were written in Hebrew, and they were back translated from earlier Greek, right?
Yeah, no, none of them were originally written in Hebrew. They're all originally written in Greek. That's why they had complete Greek texts with them. Right?
Greek was the first.
There was no Hebrew spoken at the time. Hebrew had become a liturgical language, right? By the 2nd century BC.
Why Greek?
I stood in a synagogue in Israel, 2nd century, and you know what was written? There was nothing in Hebrew. It was all Greek.
Really?
And people are, you can check me on it, right? They all are. They all have zodiacs, right? Right?
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah.
That's all reflected in the language. It's like a fingerprint, man. You can track this stuff. The Old Testament, if I say anything today, the Old Testament is a work of the 3rd century, and it's originally in Greek. Yeah, the name Eve, Ewa, is the shout that a bacchant makes.
Eve is the shout that a bacchant?
Bacchant, yeah.
What's a bacchant?
It's a woman under the influence of some pretty powerful drugs who's
Everything is about drugs. There's nothing that's not about drugs. Is there anything in history that has nothing to do with drugs, or is it all drugs?
Yeah, but it was boring,
You just refuse to acknowledge it if it's not about drugs. That's what I'm taking from this. Is that right?
No, it's just so many drugs. Yeah, no, the bacchanalia, right? The ecstasy, the place we get the concept ecstasy is from the state that one of these women would be in, and they could murder you, and it was totally friggin' legal. And that was one of the things that they like to do. You know why? You get a bloodthirst. Does that bother you?
You get a bloodthirst.
Yeah, and you carry around these baskets. We have these represented, full of snakes and dildos.
Do you ever just find when you're looking through these texts? Do you ever like maybe I'm not looking at this from a neutral perspective. Like maybe I got somehow corrupted at some point and I'm only looking for the stuff that's going to fly in the face of academia because they f***ed me over when I was doing my dissertation.
No, what drags me in is the Christ. I'm still looking for Jesus.
That's the one thing.
That term, Christ, is a pharmaceutical term.
Is it possible that the texts that you've read that tell you some of these things can be translated in different ways or seen from different perspectives? Or is what you're saying that these texts say, is that objective fact?
Yeah, I'm all about sources, and you have to be genuine to your source. So when I say something, I know it sounds outrageous, but there's a source that does exactly what I just said. That's all I'm supposed to do as a journalist, is report to you the sources. And let me give you an example. There's a guy named Nonus, and Nonus he writes a paraphrase of John, the Gospel of John. Okay, and in it, Nonus talks about like Mary's alabastron and that whole sexy event and what
Mary's what?
Alabastron.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's an oil-containing device. It's a
Okay.
yeah. There's older forms of them that are bigger. Aristophanes makes fun of it on the stage.
Okay.
In the Lysistrata.
Aristophanes was an ancient. He was a playwright, comedian, like an ancient comedian.
The father,
but he did
of
plays.
comedy.
They were like plays.
Father, come on, man.
Wow.
This is Aristophanes. He's the one. They march out on stage, big.
Yeah, the last chapter of your book was all about him.
Yeah.
It was fascinating hearing that, back then they were able to make fun of, the top elite part of the society and the people in government. And he made fun of Socrates, ripped Socrates, right?
Yeah, the stage is a religious place. The stage in antiquity was not for entertainment. Nobody's getting rich off of it. What we're doing is we're purifying the people. Yeah. And so they needed that. They needed that humor. The Romans carried the same thing to their credit. Those hut-dwelling Romans, to their credit, they did bring this protection as well. And you see it on their imperial side when you've got a whole bunch of people surrounding Julius Caesar, yelling at him things like, "Are you sleeping with the king?" Stuff like that, because he was visiting someplace. They're trying to ward off the maleficio. The magic that's bad, the bad making.
What do you ever, like, when you're reading these texts, how do you know what you're reading isn't sort of like an ancient, because I'm sure people in the ancient times, when they were writing, everybody, whether you're a journalist or whatever it is, everybody has an axe to grind, right? And how do you know, like, what you're reading isn't sort of like a tabloid or a hit piece, for lack of a better term, that is skewing the optics of what was really happening?
Yeah. What you're talking about is getting through a dark cave, essentially.
Yeah.
There's a line on the wall and with a rope on it, and you can follow from one end of the cave to the other. That's how we get through back and forward through the cave. Yeah, and in this case, it's the pharmacology, the science. It's not just the pharmacology; it's the science. That's really what. If you follow the scientific development of people and watch that over time, you can notice trends, like what's popular when they're reaching a pinnacle, and the Greeks can now express calculus with words, right? That's quite an advancement. Can you express calculus with words?
No, I can't even do it.
Yeah, no, forget that. Physics too, man.
Right.
No. No. But yeah, I don't want to rattle on. What did you want to ask another question.
Yeah. Yeah. I have an endless amount of questions. Are you familiar with the guy John Marco Allegro, who spent all of his life deciphering the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he wrote The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross?
One of the reasons Carl Ruck has anything to do with me is because I have no interest. I have no interest in any of that. And you think isn't that insulting to Carl Ruck?
It seems right in line with what you're doing, though.
No. Well, it does, but I have no interest in it because it attracts. I'm sorry. Danny, I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's a lot of hokum. Yeah, there's a lot of hokum. We only have the sources.
That's what I'm saying. It's just so hard to navigate what's good, what's bullshit, and what's real.
Go to the primary sources.
Yeah, but that's easy. That's easy for you to say.
Yes, enroll in my class today, right? Yeah, that's exactly the point of why you need classicists. That's why Thomas Jefferson was trying to recreate democracy, right? No establishment of any laws for religion, right? Purifying. He purified the stream. Made another democracy. And he's the one who said, I'm sorry, it's you. It's your show. I didn't mean to say wait.
No, Dom. No, it's not rude of you. Go ahead.
He said every 150 years you're going to get somebody who tries to insurrect and overthrow the government. And
every 150 years?
Yeah, 100. He said 100 to 150. And he said when they do, you have to take the tyrants and you have to shed their blood. Anybody who tries to overthrow the government, you have to shed their blood and the blood of their lieutenants on the tree of liberty. Isn't that interesting?
What's the tree of liberty?
Oh God,
that's just a symbolic term.
It's the state. Yeah, it's the res publica. It's the republic, baby. You got to save the republic by sacrificing the tyrant. That's an ancient Greek idea. Back when they had tyrants too, who were women who could take you captive. They could drug you and they could cut your testicles off and they would sell you. Yeah, trafficking women. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
How do you make eunuchs? How do you make eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven? So that's what kind of pulled me out of the Christianity, was seeing a lot of the stuff that's actually there. Yeah.
Seeing some of the depictions of the darker side with the human trafficking and stuff like that, and the sex trafficking.
I would say the reality, right? It's history. You want to know the truth. History means inquiry. People don't. You think it meant like a set of events. If you were a historian, right? I can't stand historians unless they can do the original languages, and most of them can't. Classical historians don't do the side that is the philology.
So why don't you take John Marco Allegro seriously?
Because I want nothing to do with any controversy. It's huko.
You don't want anything to do with controversy?
Yeah. I'm a purist, right? I just want those sources.
Why do you think he's controversial?
The sources keep getting me fired, and I just want the sources out there.
And he didn't read the sources?
No. It's just, it has to do with...
He spent it, because he was reading the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And he based everything that he was talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, which I don't...
So to you, it's irrelevant.
It is totally irrelevant.
Was there any evidence of using psychedelic mushrooms in antiquity?
Yeah. I used to send Carl Ruck references every time I came across. I was going through these formulae, these ancient formulae, and every time I would come across the mushrooms, I sent it to him. And I did that because I just wanted to pound him and say, look, you were right, because people shunned him. They blacklisted him.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And it's not right. He was there bringing the knowledge of the use of drugs in antiquity.
Right.
Yeah.
What is so superior about Greek compared to Hebrew or any of these other Aramaic? When did Aramaic?
Oh God, who cares?
Who cares?
I cannot think of a less relevant. Look, in the libraries.
Why though? Why?
In the libraries that we have from the ancient world, Okay, if you just look at the libraries, remember, look at the peaks.
What libraries are you talking about?
It's always
Alexandria?
big libraries. Alexandria, right? Look at what's in those. Now we don't have anything. We do have one that just opened up in Herculaneum. They just scanned it, and the first word they scanned was purple.
Oh, yeah.
Porphyra.
Purple was the first word.
Yes. It's one of my words that I brought to you in my little presentation.
So again, so to you, what makes Greek so superior to any of these other languages or linguistics?
It's able to convey and stretch. It's able to build, essentially. It's flexible. So imagine a system like half of English is based on Greek roots. Right? Imagine you've got words that are using
Greek and Latin, right?
Some of it is Latin, but that's only, oh God, I'm going to step in it here, but look, there's two types of classes. It's those who are Hellenists and those who study Latin. And everybody knows what happens to the Hellenists. They know it attracts the most intelligent people. And over time, it turns their brains into mind-expanding.
Right.
This is the power. You asked me what's so beautiful about Greek. Greek is able to build. Let me give you an example. The word to kiss is phileo. Right? We get all our phil words from that. Philosophy is the love of wisdom, right? Phileo means to kiss. So if I were nice Roman, skirt-wearing Roman, I may walk up to you when I met you and kiss you. You know, do you mind if I kiss you? That's phileo. Then there's kata phileo. Kata is an intensifier. So it takes it to the level of you and I French. I meet you.
Like making out.
Give you a nice big kiss.
Now, what about like, does it discern from one person just kissing versus them kissing together? Like both kissing each other?
It changes.
Is that
No, it's the degree of amorousness that's involved. Like the degree that Jesus had with Judas.
Right.
When he kissed Jesus.
We'll get there. I want to expand a little bit more.
Okay.
I want you to talk a little bit more about Greek,
Fair.
and the language,
Fair.
and how far it expands compared to other languages, and how it expands just the human mind.
So you have a set of prepositions that are used as prefixes, and with those you can build concepts. And if you just look at the concepts alone, those are basically, when you're talking unique words, that's like the capacity of your language. Greek has it's been estimated 250,000 to upward, I've seen upward of 500,000 unique words. Just to give you a way to compare it, ancient Hebrew has about 8,000. Right. So it's unique word. It can build its own vocabulary so that you can create or coin terms. Do you walk around coining terms?
No.
Okay. There's the problem. Right? If you start and engage in this process of letting the Greek pump your brain, you'll start coining words. You'll open up a capacity to engineer around you. It's a superiority of the language. It's a power. It's overwhelming. And it overwhelmed antiquity. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, who's on a ton of drugs, including opium. So much opium that Galen says, I can't stand this guy. He keeps bothering me about his opium. He just wants me to more and more. He's adjusting his medication up. Giving him a stronger dose.
Who developed the language?
You mean what people?
Like when did it first come about, and how long did it take to expand to 250 to 500,000?
Yeah, let's take what modern scholars would say and just throw that out the window. Okay.
What would modern scholars say?
They'd all sorts. They'd hit and miss all over the place. They'd guess all sorts of. You could probably have a range of 3,000 years. They wouldn't know.
Okay.
Where does Greek actually come from? It's that old Indo-European bunkum, right? That stuff's not accurate. The Greeks, like, forget modern linguistics. The Greeks, what did the Greeks themselves say in their own text? They said, we are the descendants of the Pelasgoi. These are a group of marauding Chalcolithic, so this is 5,000 BC.
Okay.
5,000 BC, called the Pelasgoi, the carriers of the purple. Yeah.
This is where Greek came from.
These are the antecedents of the Phoenicians, those who carry the purple.
Okay. What is the purple?
Way back, oh God, it's Murex squeezing. I take a little snail out of the water and he's in a shell. And I squeeze out this stuff and process it. There's a whole bunch of processing. And they turn it into a substance that we use in our religion, right? In order to induce oistromania, right? You can tell the girls who develop it because their fingers are stained with the purple. You can tell because their lips are stained with the purple. Yeah. Yeah, it's, who knows what's in it. I mean, I've heard people say, oh, is it DMT? Is it blah, blah, blah?
Okay.
Whatever. Who knows? Who knows and who cares at this point?
Right.
When do these people stop using drugs?
What is this, Steve? Herculaneum Scrolls, a 20-year-old journey to read the unreadable.
Yeah, this is what Hillman was talking about. This is Herculaneum is that city that was destroyed. It was a sister city to Pompeii, and it has a lot of preserved scrolls in it. And so it's if you can unwrap these crusted little scrolls, you can read them. And there's one kid that did with AI. He used an AI to help him out. But yeah, like what Hillman said, it said purple. One of them did.
It was the first word that they could visibly read. This library, they suspect, is, I don't know, they waffle. So I don't know. That's for the archaeologists. They got to figure that out. But they say it's probably the Julian library from the gens Julia. So the gens of Caesar himself, right? It's destroyed in 79. So it's going to have, I can promise you, inside of this thing, I've already talked to the professor who did the scans.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's at Kentucky.
Okay.
SEALs. And he's a nice guy, really nice guy. And he said, no, this is all going to be made public. Right, public access. So I've already got a team of people, shout out to the followers of Lady Babylon, who are ready to transcribe and translate. I guarantee you, I promise you.
How close do you think AI is to translating Greek? And how accurate do you think it could possibly get?
I just had a conversation with Dr. Ruck about that, just a short one. And it's gonna happen. Yeah. Even if they feed it the lexicon, it depends on what they feed her, right? Like Mary nourished in the temple. Did you know Mary was being fed by angels?
No.
Yeah, she's got purple fingers in the apocryphal text. Yeah, she's got purple fingers. She's feeding from
So Mary was doing drugs.
from the angels. Yeah, that's when they auctioned her off at 12. A lot of this. Can we go here yet or no?
How far into the podcast are we?
We're at I would say 145.
We can start to delve in. There's got to be a point where we're going to cut it for Patreon, but let's keep going and then
I'll mute some stuff if we have to, and then if it's getting too deep, then we'll just jump to the Patreon.
Yeah.
So
Deep breath.
I'm going to sound like a complete idiot when I'm trying to ask you this question, but I'm to the best of my knowledge, at some point, the Romans tried to get rid of all these texts and get rid of all of the links to drugs, right? And they tried to rewrite history.
The Romans, I wouldn't call those people Romans. I would say the Christians.
The Christians.
Yeah.
Who were the first Christians?
Who were the You know who the first one was? It's the guy on the cross with the head of the ass. That's the
Jesus was the first Christian.
That's the first depiction of Jesus.
The first depiction of Jesus.
Yeah, isn't that neat? If you knew the ancient cult, you'd have ears to hear, and you'd know what that means. The metamorphoses will teach you everything, the transformations.
Can you expand on that? What was the first depiction of Jesus?
Him on a dude on a cross, very crude, dude on a cross with a head of an ass.
With the head of a donkey.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't know Nicander.
No.
No, Nicander was a priest. 1st century BC. Late 2nd. 1st. And at the time, they were all super well educated.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy Nicander, he's quoted by later authorities all over the place. They're going to find Nicander in Herculaneum. You watch.
So at what point, or was there a point that the drug use started to taper off?
Yeah. In the 3rd and 4th, you start getting movements of Christianity that is bursting in. Libanius talks about these. They're raids. And the Christians burst in if anybody is using incense. Because one of the main ways that they're using drugs is through fumigation.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an active practice. The first Bach in Medea, she does this. There's an account of it by Diodorus, the Sicilian. And Diodorus says that she filled a pot full of all the best, choicest drugs and carried it through the town burning. Mm-hmm. Carried it through the town and fumigated everyone.
Wow.
And everybody joined into this giant thing that we now call an orgy. Right? When we say the rites, the cult rites, those are the orgies. Right? And you have the association with sex, but I'm not going there.
Well, there was...
Unless you'd like to.
Orgies were a thing. They were just a thing that was always going on right back then. And
No.
No?
What do you think? These people are lunatics? This is just like a whole bunch of orgies?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, this isn't.
I thought that there was. I thought that there was like in Athens.
Yeah, like in Greece.
In Greece, there was always orgies, but the problem was that there was like family members participating in the same, like a mother and son.
Yeah.
And then that was looked down upon by the people in Rome.
That's what the Christians were doing. They started persecuting the Christians for the Roman government.
Oh, so the Christians were the one that were doing the
Romans
not the Greeks.
No. It was Roman political control. Yeah, that exerted that influence. They're the ones who were the save the children from sex mommy. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They were rounding up, especially in Alexandria, because that was the thing. They would get involved in practices. The Christians, they would fellate the dude who was their equivalent of a priest. It was like a father. Yeah, he was the leader of the Christian coven. Yeah, it was this there. And Romans were like, no, we stop at the end. Were they having orgies all the time? No, but you have seasonal orgies, right? Seasonal religious actions that you and I would classify as both orgies. Just a religious ritual and a sexual rite. Right? There's a reason that those two words are from the same, emotion.
Right.
Same gut. Because sex was religion to them as well. Right? And if you don't understand that, it's because you're not a...
No, I understand. I can understand it. I can...
You did Buddhism stuff, didn't you? You probably... I don't have any of that, but isn't that an Eastern thing as well?
I didn't do any Buddhism stuff.
You didn't?
No. What gave you that idea?
I don't know. It's previous misconception. It was somebody you were interviewing was talking about. Now you did it. It was the guy that I hate. Okay, look, I don't hate this guy, but I hated his interview with you. I thought he was being condescending.
Why? You just thought he was being condescending. You didn't disagree with anything he was saying. You didn't think what he was saying was wrong, right?
No, I thought a lot of what he's saying is wrong. Yeah, but he's not a text guy. He doesn't work with those classical texts. So whenever, you have to be careful. Whenever somebody steps out there onto some classical concept like Gnosticism, hey, buddy, if you can't go back and you can't read the originals, don't bother saying anything about it. My mentor, Dr. John Scarborough at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, told me on the first day, he said, it's great to have you as a student, and drop all your secondary sources, because we're not about that. We don't care what other people think. We don't want you to tell me what your theories are. Religious studies, and I'm telling you this just as one person to another, religious studies, this is why classical philologists laugh at religious studies.
Why?
Because they don't master the basics. Don't tell me what Cicero said. Don't tell me what Homer said unless you can read what Homer said. I used to tell my seminarians that because I taught at seminary.
Who was Homer?
Who was Homer? He was a poet. He was a bard, baby.
From when?
He sang the song 8th
century.
Yeah, 8th century. Yeah.
There was three famous poets who you talk about, who you take the sources from, which is Homer, Ovid, and who else?
Yeah, Ovid, not so much.
Not so much Ovid.
No. If I only had my three choices, I was going to make a soup of the best stuff. Yeah, I would say Homer, and I would say Pindar. Yeah, Pindar gives you that classical flavor. And then I would say Aeschylus, as did Euripides. He had to give in Aristophanes' play, The Frogs. Dionysus goes to the underworld. Remember, the stage at the time is a place of ritual purification. It's a place of ritual purification. So Aristophanes pulls out Euripides and Aeschylus fighting about who's the better poet in hell, if you will.
In hell?
Yeah, it's not really hell. They didn't really have a concept of hell. It was the other side of the dark star.
The other side of the dark star?
Yeah, which is apparently, it's apparently the place from which they would pull all of this oracular information. They said it was the real, and we were the image of it. Go figure.
Okay. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. Yeah. Maybe you got to be on the juice.
Maybe.
You gotta stick that stuff up your ass.
Yeah. We gotta put some purple in our butts to really understand what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first depiction of Christ was a man being crucified with a donkey head.
Correct.
And so who was Jesus Christ?
Yeah, Christ is a title.
Christ is a title.
Yeah. Christ is a title. Yeah, and it's a pharmaceutical term. It's the
Christ is a pharmaceutical term.
where you put,
in Greek.
Yeah, yes, and it means I have several examples of it to show you, but it means you can perform an incrustation. They called it, where I give you a drug. What you'll see me do is I'll spit on the ground. Yeah, I'll spit on the ground and I'll use a combination of earth and spittle. My own spittle. Why am I spitting? Did you know Jesus walked out and spit in people's faces?
I thought you said Christ was just he was an actual person?
In the text. Who is he in the text?
Who is he? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's most important.
Okay.
And that text is going to show us history, right? You can say what you want about the text as long as we're translating it accurately. So what is the text? Because the text is our evidence. This is science, man. I refuse to give over the discipline of classics to the humanities people. It needs to be taken by the scientists. Linguistics is a science. I'm not a linguist. I'm a classical philologist.
What's the difference?
Linguists do general stuff, right? Like how language acts under certain circumstances, or
okay,
it's the basic mechanics.
Allegra was a linguist.
Yeah, classicists do just Greek. And then there are some that do Latin. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me more about Christ.
Yeah. So it's a drug term, and it means to be putting that thing in your eye. Can I show you some?
So to Christ or to christen means to put drugs in your eyes.
Originally, yeah.
Originally.
Okay.
So how did this get turned into the person everybody knows as Jesus
The
Christ?
fairy tale.
Yeah.
For example, you can talk about the age of the apostles, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody gets in their mind the images of bearded adult men, right? People don't realize those are teenagers.
The apostles. We're talking about the picture of like Jesus with the apostles at the Last Supper.
Yeah, notice they're all bearded men.
They're all bearded men, yeah.
Yeah. What happened? Because the original description, he's constantly calling them children, and they are. Yeah.
In the original description, who's constantly calling?
Okay, James and John are two of Jesus's boys.
Yes.
He picked them up one day on a boat.
What do you mean, boys? Like they're his homies, or like they're his children?
Yeah. What do? That's the question. They end up together a lot with boys in tombs.
With boys in tombs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Multiple documents show that.
Okay.
We have Saint Cyril coming out of one of these graveyards with a bunch of venom, it says, bleeding out his and a couple of prostitutes with him. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Every Heracles has his Hylas.
What was
Yeah.
how common was prostitution in these cultures back then, in this society?
Define.
How was prostitution viewed, and how ubiquitous was prostitution, and what was it looked down upon? Was it just an accepted part of society, kind of like drugs were?
Oh God, we got to go to Cyprus. We got to go to Cyprus and worship Aphrodite, where once a year, your wife has two choices. Either she can shave her head and stay with you, or she can go to the public forum and pick up one of the local sailors and with him all night, not thinking about you, and come back the next day and be completely healed. Yeah. That's the devotion. That's the devotion to the Aphrodite. Remember, the Romans are children of Venus. So this is embedded. This woman-centric, gorgeous goddess, this is part of their medical system. It's part of their healing. And so those, you asked me about later, those the Christians would call prostitutes. And that's where you and I get our term of prostitute from.
Okay.
And the negative, you would never, these are priestesses of Aphrodite. You have made sacred the institution of prostitution.
Why would the wives have to go have with sailors? And who were the sailors?
I don't know. Sometimes you get the need.
Who were the sailors?
Look, they come in and they go. And it's a religious festival. If you have a problem with that, that's between you and your wife. Now, what kind of instruction does that give to the people, to the men on Cyprus?
What kind of instruction?
What do you learn from that kind of religious festival? Or once a year, your wife gets to go have with whomever she wants.
Are the wives wanting to do this?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to ask them when they're doing it. But since they all come back with smiles.
It says that? They come back with smiles?
No, I made up they come back with smiles. But they do it every year. And you only have one choice. Shave your head and enter. And why do they say shave your head? Because that shows that you're in the sign of mourning. That you're mourning the loss of Adonis. That you're mourning that. So you stay with your husband. You see the loyalty? She's loyal to him even in death. The women who keep their hair, that's resurrection, baby. Right? They're out there. This is Easter. Yeah. Yeah. Does that kid look exactly like you? Yeah. Half sisters and brothers.
Huh.
Yeah. Children of Aphrodite. Right? Sons of God. These are Romans. That's what the Romans called themselves. right? Offspring of Aphrodite herself. It's gorgeous. Once you have access to these texts, you'll be surprised. It'll open up a whole new world that is the actual history. History means inquiry. Right? It's not a linear chain of events. It means inquiry. And specifically, historia were the questions that you ask oracles. And who are oracles? It's some 14-year-old girl totally bombed on drugs. Singing.
Wow.
Singing, yeah. Her words, they're divine. If we follow them, we're going to end up at democracy.
I think it was in your book, I think it was Plato who you said that he was attempting to, or maybe he wasn't attempting to, but he thought of drugs and delusion and creativity and mania all as the same thing. Right, and I think you used an analogy to the human soul being driven by two horses. The human soul was a chariot being pulled by two horses that were fed drugs, basically.
What you know whose horses those are? Those are the horses of the gods, baby, right? Yeah. And what are the gods fed? Ambrosia.
Ambrosia.
You know who has the best ambrosia? Ganymede. You know who Ganymede is?
I don't.
I'm sorry. If I may, kill this if you have to. Please, Steve.
So for people who are listening to this podcast now, if it's on YouTube, it's going to be heavily censored because there's some words and there's some descriptions that Ammon is giving here that can't be shown on YouTube. So if you want to watch this thing fully uncensored, it's on our Patreon. It's linked below. Sorry to interrupt. Continue, please.
I will be as literal and direct as possible, the most scientific as possible, in honor of you, Danny, because I don't want to.
I just want to make sure that this thing gets out to as many people as possible.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the high priests and priestesses at YouTube and Google will not let that happen if there are crazy words being used. So
yes, no,
that's the only reason.
Totally. So Ganymede is the lover boy of Zeus. And what he does is he pours Zeus the nectar. And in Priapian cult, Priapus is the god of the erection in antiquity.
There's a god of erection.
Yeah, in the Met Museum. You can see they've got a thing up now of all the Priapic stuff and all the, when you're in a city and you see a statue of Priapus, you rub the face. If you're a young girl, you rub the face for the sake of, good luck. It's a positive thing. So you'd see people doing this. Every garden has a statue of Priapus in Rome.
Can you find a statue? Oh, there we go.
Has a statue.
Oh my God. Blow up one of these photos. Blow up that one in the middle.
That's a beautiful
Priapus
one.
was just okay. This is according to Wikipedia. Okay, Priapus was described in various sources as the son of Aphrodite by Dionysus, and the son of Dionysus and Chion as perhaps the father or son of Hermes, or as the son of Zeus or Pan. Okay.
So that thing.
Oh wow! Hang on. Go back real quick. Wait. According to legend, Hera cursed him with inconvenient impotence. He could not sustain an erection when the time came for sexual intercourse.
Inconvenient impotence.
I've read.
So he had a huge dick, but he couldn't get it hard?
I've read descriptions in different ancient authors about the different drugs that are made in order to induce and to reduce it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a drug thing that they're using. Look at that little guy there. You know, the first thing Bacchus did when he came back from hell is he sat on a over the grave of the guy who pointed in the direction of the cave where he had to go to find the underworld. Yeah. Why are they doing that stuff with their...
Why are these people such sickos?
You asked me, you were like, are you sure you're not just focusing too much? Look at this.
Yeah, no,
Look at
it's.
this
I guess it's hard to escape, right?
Yeah. The first depictions of Aphrodite are she has a beautiful woman with a giant coming right at you.
Can you find this, Steve?
Yeah, find the early Aphrodite sculptures, please.
Early Aphrodite sculptures.
Yeah. Love it. It's good stuff, and they put stuff on those. You can find this in the Satyricon, right? And that's how they're administering drugs. That's how they're administering this. Yes, and orally and ocular. They have an ocular administration. And my person.
An ocular.
Yeah, no, not a. That's spreading the seed, brother. Right? Don't you want to have an incrustation? You know, somebody's seed. The Ophites. The Ophites, they called them in antiquity.
There it is.
They're a sect.
This is Aphrodite?
Look, she's lifting up her skirt. What's she got under their skirt?
Oh my Lord.
What is that?
Now, why?
Why?
It's a statue of Aphroditos.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Huh.
Yeah.
Why not?
Is that disturbing? Is that disturbing?
It's not disturbing. It's just interesting. I'm wondering, were they hyper obsessed with gender, and why were they so obsessed with?
They don't even have a word for homosexual.
Right.
Yeah, right. So it's all a part of the. They don't seem to have a problem.
So there was no moral or ideological boundaries when it came to sex, of course. Obviously, or scientific. I mean, scientific. Other than the fact you could create offspring, right?
One thing you have to say, and I always use this. Whenever you hear a historian or classicist or anybody using generalities, right? You can tell that they're full of it. Different cultures. We're talking about span of 2,000 years. You know, say 1,000 BC to 1,000 Anno Domini. You know, about 2,000 years. So in that time, you've got a lot of different things going on, right? Spartans do something totally different from what Greeks do, right? Dorians do different things than Ionians do, right? Where do we find this lady? What about
Where do we find her? Tell me where we find her.
I don't remember where this one's from.
Okay.
But where is she originally, her form? You got to thank the Great Mother, baby. You got to thank the Great Mother. There's a lot of castration going on. And the worship of the Great Mother. You know, I've seen a 10-year-old boy. That's what Lucian says. A 10-year-old boy cut off his own and this was during a religious festival. No, don't worry, the parents are there.
Lucian wrote this?
Yeah.
Who was Lucian?
Oh, he's 2nd century. He's a guy who's writing the Anno Domini, and he's talking about the rites of Cybele.
Okay.
And at these festivals, you know, you could go there too. It's like spring break, but...
Except you're cutting off.
Yeah, and we have an account. No, Catullus 63 is an account of one of these boys who did this, cut his off, and the next morning he was like, I don't know.
Regret?
But you take this, says Lucian, and you throw them into somebody's house, and whoever gets the towels has to provide you with a woman's kit.
What's a woman's kit?
Oh, all the clothes that a woman needs to be sexy.
Why would they do that?
Because you cut your off.
Why would you want to cut your off to dress like a woman, though?
Because you're honoring the Great Mother.
You're honoring the Great Mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Everybody loves mom except for Nazis, right?
Yeah, I guess.
The Romans imported her cult when they were having a problem with Hannibal. They were like, we're screwed. What do we do? And they sent somebody out to the oracle. And the oracle at Delphi told them, she said, you got to import the worship of the Great Mother.
Okay.
And so they did.
Okay.
And they blew them. That's when they blew up into an empire. This is like 205 BC.
Okay.
And after that, they just blew up. Their controllers blew up. It's that ecstatic worship of the mother. That's what requires the king. Imagine how devoted you would have to be to the Great Mother. Cut off your own. Now, he said sometimes tourists do get wrapped up in the whole festival and will be like, they'll join in. But that's
Sure.
Right? Remember, you're on drugs and you're being whipped and stuff too, baby. I mean, this is intricate. This is crazy stuff. There's a sadistic level to this. Oh, it's gorgeous. They open up these Roman villas, like the Villa of the Mysteries, Herculaneum and Pompeii and stuff. They open those things up and they've got all these frescoes of gorgeous people with whips and people. And you're like, what are they doing? What are these people doing? It's crazy. No, it's mental health. Don't worry. It purges the society. The emperors know this. Yeah, it gets out of hand, and they have a conspiracy in the 180s. And it gets out of hand, and they end up killing like 2,000 women. And the way that they caught them was their drugs. Yeah.
What was the conspiracy?
It was a bunch of wives of prominent senators who were trying to restructure the government.
Oh. It was a coup, attempted coup.
Right, that's why they took it down. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They made it illegal. Those Romans.
These are the fresco whips of Pompeii?
Yeah, look at these.
I don't know. Is this them? I'm trying to find it. This is just what popped up.
Yeah, there you go. What's going on down there? Whew.
Filet-
Fashion show. No, the one of them's getting beaten, baby. There's somebody right next to her with a whip.
If you had a time machine and you could go to any place in history, where's the first place you would go?
Yeah, I would go back to the Garden of Gethsemane.
The Garden of Gethsemane.
It's the public park where Jesus was arrested.
You are obsessed with this.
Yeah, I think
you constantly talk about this moment when Jesus was arrested.
Yeah, it's why is that?
Is this in the Bible?
Yes, it is.
Also, dumb question. How many versions of the modern Bible are there?
I don't know how many, but I can think of at least 12.
And what's the difference between them all? Why are there so many versions?
Depends on the time that they're translated. And if you'll notice, a lot of them will follow the earlier authors. Right? Bible scholars don't read anything outside of the Bible. So how good do you think their vocab is? How good do you think their translation skills are? Mm-hmm. Right, that's the problem. So those translations are generally pretty bad, and that's what I brought some examples of.
Okay.
And this is in the garden, actually, that I brought these slides for. Okay. And this is the Garden of Gethsemane. And where are we? We're with Jesus in the first. And he's being arrested.
Okay, so let's give some context. Yeah. Let's give some context to this. So who was Jesus and why and what is so good, what is so great about him?
Yeah, Jesus is a guy who walked around with 12 children and
all the time.
And prophets and a group of prophets. No, I'm just telling you what the text says.
He was just a guy who walked around with prophets.
And children.
So what was so great about him?
He called his disciples and he calls them his children constantly, right? Remember, God.
So he's a pimp.
God blesses those who take care of the children, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
He takes care of these children.
He takes care of these children.
Okay.
There is a female underage called the Paidiska. When Jesus Christ is in his trial, his followers won't admit they're his followers, right? It's the whole, you're going to deny me, right? Jesus is all like, I'm going to get friggin' scandalized, right? And you're going to deny me. When he's in the garden and he gets caught, and those three, Peter, James, and John, they're keeping watch, the text says. They're guarding at a distance. While Jesus takes naked boy that's been assigned to him. That's what the text says. Like a slave.
So the depiction of this event is only in one version of the Bible. Is that right? Is it Matthew?
No, it's in multiple, but the kid is only in Mark.
Only in Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's only like 2 sentences,
And-
right? Steven, can you pull up the passage?
I've got it here.
Oh, you've got it there. Okay.
Yeah. 1451. It's that first slide.
I can pull up the passages and show the different versions.
Yeah,
and
let's
how
do
it
that.
translates as well. What passage is it?
Mark 1451.
1451. All right, cool.
Okay, a young man. What is it? Can you blow it up?
Yeah.
A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus when they seized him. That's all it says.
Yeah. Now look at the Greek.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, a young boy was assigned to him, having wrapped his penis with a medicated bandage, and they arrested him.
A medicated bandage is what it says.
Sindon. Yeah, I've got the...
Okay, so I'm comparing
got the-
yours to what this one says. So visibility, I can turn on Greek as well.
Okay.
I would love to see how the this online Bible matches yours.
Check out the...
Is okay. So right here, is that exactly what you're reading?
Yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Okay, which one of those Greek words is wrapped in a medicated linen?
Epigumnu. This is on the... Okay, let's just start on the first line.
Maybe should we go to his computer, Steve?
Yeah, I'm punching it up.
That's it.
Okay.
Let's go to the first one. The second word in is neoniskos, and that is what we call a diminutive. So
Neoniskos.
it's a little of something else. And what is a neonias? A neonias is a boy.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a little boy.
Okay.
And they called paidiska female prostitutes who were underage.
Okay.
And when I say underage, I don't mean...
Did they define
under
underage
18.
down back then?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not under 18. It's before...
So okay.
Right.
So that was their word for before.
Age was... They didn't set a year.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Right?
The translation here says young.
And was there was there any sort of moral boundaries when it came to sex or prostitution based on pre?
Not from what I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, generally, in
Nothing.
different civilizations, you can still, like in Athens, you can still prosecute for somebody coercing what you and I would say is underage, them before puberty. Yeah, that's still, you can get in trouble for that.
Okay.
But it's not like it's not like there's compensation involved because, it's not like a crime like you and I consider a crime. It's more like a civil crime. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like being punched.
Right.
Yeah, you've damaged somebody so you can give them reparations for damaging them.
Okay.
That's what you do. But the pedagogy in antiquity, pedagogue, that person who educates the children, right? That person, that's the kentauron, they called them. The centaur. It's their word for past.
Which means what?
Oh, with children.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and Chiron, remember Chiron, he's a centaur who is the master of Heracles. And now you know why Heracles has his boy Hylas. Do you understand? The sacred mystery is passed from generation to generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, again, what was so special about Jesus? He was a guy who walked around with kids.
Yeah. Apostles. Yeah. So, what was so special about him?
Was he the only one doing that?
What was so special about it? Like, and that's perfect. No, he's not. It's called being a leistes.
What is a leistes?
He was crucified between two of these. A leistes is defined, and I've got it on the next. Let's see. Oh, here, look. This follows my presentation. So this is what the boy that was with Jesus, this is what he was with him, doing. He is following him. Notice they use this term sunakuletho.
And
right? Colutheo,
where do
excuse
you
me.
get this from? This
Oh,
image?
this thank you to the Victorians from Oxford, who have given us this wonderful, fantastic lexicon of ancient Greek.
Okay.
1850s.
Okay.
After that book that you just had was
Oh, okay.
was written.
Okay.
And here it is. And notice that it's using soldiers. It's using term for soldiers and slaves. Right? So this kid is not just hanging out with Jesus, right? People have tried to explain this for a while. What was the kid doing with Jesus, right? Okay, anyway, let's go on to the next one.
Double click. There you go. Now hit the green
Blow it
button.
up. Look, this is what the kid is wrapped on his gumnos. And you say, what's gumnos? Gumnos
Fine
is...
cloth, usually linen.
Yeah, fine cloth. Look where look at the second line. It says busines telemones, right? So they're wrapping things in this
Used for
fine
mummies.
cloth, right?
And surgeon's bandages.
And bandages, and that's where I get it. On my end, when I'm reading the medical authors, they're all saying that you impregnate linen with drugs that you're going to treat the wound with, right? This kind of makes sense.
You impregnate women.
No, linen, I'm sorry.
You impregnate linen
Don't impregnate the women.
with drugs.
Yeah.
To treat wounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't
So
that make sense?
this is the original text, and this right here is the translation that we have right now, which is, I'll punch it up for people, nothing but a linen garment.
Yeah. Notice how they took it from a bandage and turned it into
Who did this? Who's responsible for this?
crappy translators. People who do not work with the Greek. If you bring up the next
Is this an accident or is this intentional?
no,
these
it's
translations?
intentional stupidity.
Are they intentionally leaving this shit out of the Bible? Because
No, it's bad training.
oh, okay.
It's just bad training.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Now watch this one. Okay, so that last one had businos on it. Well, what is the businos? It's fine linen bandage, right? They give you at the top. But then look at the reference on the second line. That's Euripides Bacchae. Okay, so this is something that they're using within some kind of religious ritual. And look at number 2 at the bottom. Roman numeral number 2, Porphyros. That's Hesychius. And who's Hesychius? Hesychius is a sexy lexicographer from the 4th and 5th who comes in, and he has access to these ancient Greek lexicography texts, right? So before anybody was having any kind of substantial literature, the Greeks were already at the level, and these are ancient Greeks, they're already at the level of creating a language that is so highly specialized, we're still trying to translate it. Look at Porphyros here, right? And you see the different dialects that you get from at the top. You got it in Attic, and you got it in Aeolian, and so you got some Sappho there. Well, look at number 1, right? It has something to do with the sea. Number 2,
Blood gushing.
the purple. Number 2, the purple.
Purple of stuff, cloths, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Etc.
It's a dye, right? Look at number 3, purple clad. You can have the purple people, right, walking around with their purple. And then number 4, purple spots. But then number 5 is a specific. And then number 6, there it is. It's that thing that sets, right, the purple. It's the chemical that we're going to be using within the rite to make what is called the burning purple. And that comes from the Virgin. And
It comes from the Virgin.
yeah, right. Mary's fingers were covered with purple. And when her midwife came in to check her, because that's what midwives do. All this stuff, by the way, is coming from medicine. It's coming from women's medicine. Yeah, that's where all the science is.
And when the midwife came in to check her.
To check Mary, she palpated her. How'd she do that? It says she stuck her 2 fingers in. And
That's what they do when someone's pregnant to check how dilated their cervix is or whatever. Yeah.
Right. You do the same thing with cows, right?
I guess. I don't know. Never heard a cow.
No. Well, here she her, and then she. Oh God! Now you're gonna have to pull that out. Don't say that. Don't print that.
Sorry.
Okay. What happened?
Yeah, we're just creating more work for the editor.
She had purple fingers, and those purple fingers burned. Right? It says the apocryphal texts say it burned her finger, the midwife's finger. Okay. Where are we getting Baptists from? And you say, wait a minute, this thing's jumping all over. No, we're still talking about the purple. Look at this. This is the word baphe.
Dipping of red hot iron in water, hence temper or edge of a blade or tool produced thereby.
Yeah. Now look at number 2. Yeah.
Die.
And the source there is Theophrastus.
Blood. Die of blood.
Yeah, that's the source there is Theophrastus, and it's the Historia Plantarum. He was a student of Aristotle. And he's the first botanist. He's considered he wasn't the first botanist, but he was considered to be the father of botany. And if you look at the word that follows Theophrastus, it's porphyra, which is just the word we got out of Herculaneum. And it says porphyra baphe. The baptism is a baptism into the purple. Okay? We didn't leave the cult. We're still in the cult. Right? Baptists, you know what Baptists carry? They carry
Drugs.
Yeah. They carry drugs. Everybody's carrying drugs. And by the way, in the Roman market is an open market.
The Roman market is an open market.
Yeah, you can buy anything. You can buy venom from North Africa in the Roman market, make a concoction, it'll knock you down. And we know this because they have recipes and doctors writing about what do you do when you come across somebody and he's had too much hemlock. The first time I read that, I was like, wait a minute, too much hemlock? That's what Socrates was killed with, right? Yeah, but this is a dude who
They use small amounts to trip balls?
he said he'll be walking on all fours and bleeding like a sheep.
God.
Yeah, and what do? You got to give him an antidote. And that's where I was talking before about the rope that's in the cave, that's guiding us through the cave, is the science. They have come through, the Romans have come through a world that was the Bronze Age renaissance of drugs, dotes and antidotes, they call it, Christs and antichrists.
Oh.
Yeah. They are pharmacological terms. And they're using them that way. And when you get baptized, this is what you're being baptized into. It's the only way to bring eternal life. And you say, wait a minute, what? I thought, because you're thinking the wrong eternal life. There's no phrase in the New Testament that says eternal life. They all say ionic life.
Ionic life. What does that mean?
It's outside the time stream. That's how they describe it. Pythagoras said it has 360 degrees. Yeah.
So they're talking about some sort of DMT realm, maybe.
I don't know, quantum physics. I don't understand it. Because they're also talking about the dark star. This stuff is all accessible across the dark star. So I don't know what that means, but I know that you have to join a lot of drugs and a lot of behavior. Where does Bacchus always lead? Bacchus always leads us to Aphrodite. Why is that? Because she is life. There's a sacred name of Rome that is secret, and I give everybody on my channel a hard time to derive the sacred name. They can't derive the sacred name. If you know this, this is what they said in antiquity, don't blame me. They said if you knew the sacred name of Rome, you can control her power.
If you knew the sacred name of Rome, you could control her power.
Yeah. And that name is the operation of the mystery.
The name is an operation of a mystery.
Yeah, it's the operation. It is that resurrection of the Korah. That's why which they did at Eleusis every year.
Right.
Which is why you have the very same kind of worship that's spreading through the oracles. The oracles are spreading the power of that Eleusinian, they call it a purification. When you can put your population through an act that brings them healing, they're better citizens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you understand why they call the temple.
This is some wild shit, man. Priest means prostitute.
Well, that's what the later Christians called them. I mean, you know why they did now? Because this is the activity they're doing. They're bringing that healing, right? There's 20,000, I think it was 20 or 22,000, that celebrate during the Bona Dea, the Romans called it.
I mean, this is all making a lot more sense to me now. I mean, it's when you're talking about the creation of democracy and saving humanity from itself and trying to eliminate all the negative influences of ancient oligarchs or tyrants and trying to create a just and fair society, that's essentially what they did. And the use of drugs to have an understanding of this and to create this sort of world, that is the best way. I mean, even in modern times, when you hear people talking about psychedelic experiences or experimenting with things like DMT or whatever it is, there are many modern descriptions of this same thing you're sort of talking about. I mean, even like if you talk like if you wanted the best, most just and fair, uncorrupted version of government today, you would want the president of the United States to be tripping on mushrooms, right? Yeah. So, but the problem with it is the way we look at it today is if you have all the people, like going back to democracy, if you have all of these people, 10% of your population making the decisions and debating the decisions, you're never going to become the number one empire. Yeah. You're not going to be able to control other empires because you're only worrying about yourself. Yeah. You're not creating wars and trying to influence the rest of the world and trying to have the stranglehold on everyone else. Yeah. You're just worrying about your society and being good. And the downside of that is you become vulnerable to the outside world.
Or to an insurrection, which is what happened to the Romans. And they're screaming. The Emperor Julian is like, oh my God, do not let the Christians teach. And, today that's like, what? Oh, that's so terrible. And no, he says they will pull down your government right around your ears and they'll set up something that's horrific in its place. Sure enough, they did. They killed him, though. Within a few years, he was dead by a Christian soldier who speared him in the back. Yeah. It's the attempt to extinguish. That's why I'm so grateful for the Herculaneum scrolls, because every time, this is the largest, the only intact library that we have from the ancient world. And it is the largest collection. It will have completely new authors. It will have authors that we know exist, but we didn't have that copy of that play. It'll have those too. Mm-hmm. And every time in history I bring you great news, because every time in history that we have a enlightenment, it's based upon a resurgence of that classical muse. Mm-hmm. It's based upon her. Mm-hmm. And to call that forward, I predict that this thing is potentially able to create another renaissance. And I hope people are aware that it's out there. And it has silver, it has the purple written on it, right there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So these translations that you've just pulled up, what does this have to do with, or what does this tell you about the scene of Jesus in the park?
That's exactly what this verse says right here. It says...
Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Yeah, can we?
There you go. You just did it.
Yeah, and so what happened? So Jesus is there, and it says the kid dropped the bandage and ran off naked. That's exactly what that says. The kid dropped the bandage and ran off naked.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it says specifically in 51 that it was epigumnos, and epigumnos is on his private parts.
An epigumna, which is the bandage that's soaked in drugs.
The sindone that's on there, right? And why? Why is Jesus with the kid? Remember when he first walks in the garden, he falls over, he stumbles over, and he's in pain. He's going through the exact same symptoms that doctors will describe.
Jesus is?
Of the drug users. Yeah, it's in this chapter. It's in Mark 14. Yeah.
So he's tripping.
It says that he's exceptionally fearful, right? So it looks like he's in some kind of psychotic fear, and he's screaming about, "Take it, don't let me do it." And he's with his kid. He's with this kid at the time, right? And he ends up with stuff on his face, stuff that is like big drops of porphyrin.
I'm talking about bodily fluids.
Blood is how
Blood.
it's typically, no, that's how it's translated. It's not the blood that he's got, it's purple. And he's got an antidote from the kid's. That's the galene, is the kid's seed. Heracles has to have Hylas. He has to have his boy. Zeus has to have Ganymede. On the Priapeic side, they call it Ganymede's. And the question is, do you drink from Ganymede's?
I don't.
Well, that's why you're not in charge.
Yeah, probably. All right, bring me back down to earth here. What's going on in the park again? So Jesus has the purple on his face.
Yeah, he's got the purple on his
So
face.
Jesus is having some sort of a psychotic fit, right?
He's having some kind of overwhelming emotional state that's hitting him so hard, he's falling on the ground. So he's got something on board that's causing him to stumble.
And it's 4 a.m. in the morning?
It's 4 a.m. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got and who
he just came from the
who wrote this, by the way?
Party with the kids. He just came from
Did
the
one
party.
of the cops write this? One of the cops that arrested him?
No, this is Mark. Yeah.
Mark was there.
Well, no, Mark is telling you the secret things that you're not supposed to know.
So how does Mark know if he wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I don't care if he does or doesn't know. The fact is he's saying them.
Okay.
And that's what's scary.
Well, how do we know Mark
You
didn't have an
have a
extra grind
religious-
against Jesus?
you
You want to
don't-
make Jesus look like a bad guy and make him look like a weirdo
Well,
or
he
a crazy
could.
person.
He could, maybe. I don't know, for all I know.
Right.
That's why I say we have to stick with exactly what the sources
The point
say.
is that this is take it for what it's worth. This is what Mark said.
Yeah, and
Mark was not there.
No, it's Peter, James, and John, and the kid.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Mark, where did Jesus come from before this? In the scene, he came from the place where he was with all the kids in the upper room. That's where they came from, right?
In what room?
In the upper room. It's just the way to refer to the place. Look, it was shady, right? This is part of the cops. This is part of what the cops have on him, right? He sent out a couple of his boys to go scout out a place. And when he did, he told him, hey, you're going to come to this guy. And he's standing there and he's doing this. And you got to approach him and say, Jesus' boys, where do we need a place for Jesus to celebrate? And he says, take him in here. And he finds a guy and they take him up. They get a shady backroom business. Remember, what does Jesus do with his boys? We all know this. That's why we're a crowd and we're angry and we want Jesus crucified. Now you understand why there was a friggin' crowd there. Yeah. A little bit brutal with him, weren't they? Well, yeah, they had good reason to be. He was with those 12 underage kids in that room washing feet. And you got to get naked when you wash feet. Have you ever washed somebody's feet naked?
Not that I can recall.
How about a 12-year-old boy?
No, absolutely not.
Now, why wouldn't you? Do you have some kind of problem with Jesus?
Apparently I do.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's too bad because he ends up in the garden after this with the 3 older ones and he says, keep guard while he takes the young kid off to the middle of the garden. In the meantime, they're falling asleep while Jesus is rolling around in agony and doing what he's got to do to get for the Galene from the boy. And that's the mastery here. The boy has some kind of antidote. Galen describes yeah, it's not milky.
Galen describes this.
Yeah, as long with the girls exudate from their breast. You can milk. You didn't know you could?
I did not know that.
Okay, well, you can, medically. Probably has antibodies in it to whatever the venoms they're using. Because these same girls, you cut them.
And this stuff?
You cut them and you wrap them with the snake venom. And that's why we all hold up the serpent. Right? We all know it. You see my tattoo, right? It doesn't
Which tattoo?
It doesn't say it was on a pole.
Show me the tattoo you're talking about.
It says it was on a tattoo. I'm just any of them. Just any of them. I'm waxing poetic. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Galen talks about this that boys and girls create, and he talks about this being used as an antidote to snake venom specifically.
It's the Galene. It's a Greek term that means the calm after the storm. Galene. And
what is the calm after the storm supposed to mean, though?
Because, okay, remember how Jesus was screaming on the cross?
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to scream while you're on the cross, right? You don't have to.
All right.
But he not only was a screamer, he was a dyer early. He didn't die of the crucifixion. Jesus Christ did not die of a crucifixion. He screams out, and then, boom, he's gone. And it says the soldiers are surprised. They report it to Pilate. They're like, he died early, bro. Nonus tells us that vinegar that they offered to Jesus on the cross and the sponge, that was an antidoton to the dipsas. The dipsas is the horned viper of North Africa, and its venom makes you really thirsty. They were trying to give him an antidote. His followers, all his they were around the cross, they were trying to give him an antidote. He didn't get it, and he overdosed. He's dead. That's it.
How did they administer the snake venom?
Oh, that's the brother.
While he was on the cross?
No. Oh, no. He had it already by the time. When he shows up in the garden, he's got it on his face.
Oh, so he had already been given this. He gave himself the snake venom?
That's why he's going through the gyrations and feeling bad. He's already going through it. It was the boy's.
That was the antidote to it.
That is the antidote. And he says, let this cup pass. What is that cup? In the Apocalypse, the Revelation.
Yes.
It says that cup is borne up by that theriac, by that Galene. They're using the same. It's one right. They're using the same drugs in the Apocalypse. And the great enemy of God is that lady's cup, which is full of porneia. You have to drink the boy's porneia
to survive.
In order to survive.
But why did he get this? Why did he take the snake venom in the first place?
Because he was a Christ.
So he was just he overdosed. So he overdosed. How are you going to
prophesy? How are you going to prophesy?
He accidentally took too much, is what you're saying.
No, I don't think he took too much. I don't think he got an antidote. The texts are not saying.
He just didn't get an antidote.
Yeah, I think that's why Nonus says they were attempting that sponge, which, by the way, Nonus is corroborated by the Geoponica. The Geoponica is a Byzantine farmer's manual, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And in it says the vinegar, the oxus, that is the remedy. That's the common term for the remedy of the dipsas snake. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. So it's the chemical knowledge is all there. They were just using it, and it's, Heracles liked it in the eyes, though. That's the thing.
But how much later did he die from that moment in the park? How much time passed before he was crucified?
Yeah, it's at midday, isn't it? At midday. When's he shot out? I think it's during an eclipse.
Because there was like the Last Supper, right?
Yeah, during the eclipse. Yeah, no, it's later, right? Last Supper was the party all night, naked, right? It says specifically that Jesus was naked with his paideia, with his boys. And he's always calling them boys. He calls them my little ones. I've got some verses here where he calls them my little ones. Mm-hmm. Right? So what is he doing? He's perpetuating a cult that is a practical Business is if it's illegitimate because it's prosecuted by the government. And Julius Caesar was one of the people who started cracking the back of it because they kidnapped him. They were going to sell him off. And he got a ransom and came back and killed them all.
Wow.
Crucified them. Woo!
So I'm surprised it took the snake venom so long to kill him.
Yeah.
That was, so it was more than 24 hours from when he was crucified, from when he was found in the park?
No, he would have gotten it. So he went to the party with the boys at night. So that's when they would have done the administration of the flesh and the blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was the next day he was crucified.
Remember the Ophites still fillete for the sacred communion. Roman soldiers do too. Yeah.
So the sacred communion
Mithraic, yes.
was a
Your seed makes me high.
So not only was this stuff being used as an antidote, they were also mixing it with other stuff to get high?
It's polypharmacy. It's a ton of plants and animal substances. Some of them I laugh at. I'm like, oh, gee, how did they figure that out? I have no idea.
But didn't you mention that somehow the boy or either animals or humans were used to endogenously create drugs?
They tested on roosters. They tested drugs on roosters, and they would give them poisons and then feed them the antidote, cause them to swallow the antidote, and to see if that, Galen writes about that. He says you can do it on people too, and they do.
So were they giving the poisons to these people and then assuming that these people their immune system would react in a certain way and they could pull out, like, for lack of a better term, like the antibodies that we're using to fight the poison and use that to put into other people?
I think that's what's happening when they talk about breast milk.
Okay.
These priestesses will give off a breast milk. They cut their arms.
And they would give themselves drugs. And then they would
give themselves the venom over time in a wrap. Mm-hmm. And then
and their body would start fighting against it. And then they would pull out the breast milk and use that as an anti-venom.
As an anti-venom, yeah, essentially.
Or an antichrist.
It's not really an anti-venom either. It is a balancing drug.
Right.
So you're not stopping the venom. You're basically, the physicians say you're stopping the negative symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, polypharmacy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Let's get some hemlock and some henbane, some aconite, some really poisonous stuff. And then,
do you think that their pharmaceutical knowledge and their drug knowledge, if we understood all of that today, do you think it would advance our knowledge currently in science and pharmaceuticals and the treatments of illnesses and disease?
Yeah, undoubtedly. And I tell people just that. They're thinking of making the human body the producer of the drug, right? Your body becomes, they're not thinking, okay, this person is depressed, therefore I'm going to hit them with this drug. Right, this one drug, I'm going to see what happens to them and watch them, you know what I mean? They want to kill themselves? Oh, that's not going to work, right? That's not what they're doing. They're looking at using multiple drugs to basically create the potential that the human body has to make its own communion, to be a source of health, right? Sacred name of Rome.
Right.
Is that health. It is that power. It is that extended capacity. It's why we insist that the vessels are virgins. Yeah. They direct us.
It's why we insist that the vessels are virgins?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. It's why that they have to be in a certain physical state, because the person becomes the vehicle of the drug. The cup is full of her. Yeah, that's her ejaculate. We are talking about the communion that is the ejaculate of a virgin.
Right.
An oracular virgin.
Right.
Yeah. And when I say virgin, I mean, the kind that they put up on the statues, right? Remember Athena? That's the exact image, the eidolon that they're creating is Athena, the Virgin, Holy Virgin. You don't worship the Holy Virgin?
Do I?
Yeah. What is your religion?
I'm not really religious.
Yeah, I didn't think so. It's a bunch of crap, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not according to you.
No.
According to you, it's way more than I thought it was. So why in the Bible do they explain that the guys who were being crucified next to Jesus were just thieves?
Yeah, that's how they translate it. That's how they translate it.
And again, this is not on purpose. They just accidentally did this.
How are you going to translate it?
But isn't it convenient that isn't it convenient for them that they left all this out?
Oh, you are right on top of it, detective. No, seriously, write your dissertation now. Why would you choose between a kid having a linen garment and a bandage on his parts? And why would you choose to present Jesus in a way that's not accurate to the sources? I'm not saying to anybody's interpretation. There's no room for interpretation here. It's just what are the sources saying? He's a lay stace,
Which is a pimp.
which is basically a trafficker. Yeah.
Which was looked down upon, which was frowned upon back then.
Because it's an active, organized crime.
But a civil crime.
You've got boys of Galilee, and those boys of Galilee, they're entrenched in the.
But didn't you say that when the people approached Jesus in the park, you called them cops? They were like ancient
Roman
cops.
cops.
Did they have chest cams?
No, but they had big weapons. He notes it, and I have that.
And he said,
slide.
and according to Matthew, the first thing he said is, "I am not a lay stace or a trafficker."
Right. He said, "I'm not a lay stace, man." He says, "Why did you come out here? Why did you come out here with all your heavy weapons like I'm a lay stace?"
Right.
Right. Right. So.
Well, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just trying to get the antidote.
Well, it could be, but he's making a big deal about it, right?
Right.
For some reason. And he's standing there contextually right next to a kid. So, maybe he's trying to give an answer for why there's a kid with him in a public park at 4 a.m.
If I'm his lawyer, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. No, more importantly, what's that kid actually doing? And I think that's the question.
What do you think?
The evidence only shows that he could be one of these boy dudes who's providing the people who are in the cult with the galene.
Okay.
With the thing that's going to balance whatever it is
communion
that Jesus has taken that's put him into a state. And it doesn't work, and he ends up dying on the cross. And if you notice in the resurrection, we just had Easter. Did anybody notice it's another boy?
We just had an Easter and we just had an eclipse.
Yeah, another boy with Jesus in the tomb. Don't you remember?
No.
Yes.
I never read the Bible.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't. That's right. Oh, we got to start reading the Bible more.
Should I read it?
Yeah, I think you should.
Which version should I read?
The Greek version. Yeah. Yeah. Come to my class. I'll have you 20 weeks. 20 weeks. I'll have you with just enough to be dangerous.
20 weeks.
Yeah. Well, no, most of my students are.
How do I go to your class?
40.
Is it online?
Like 40 weeks.
Or do I have to show up to a university?
I'm working for a tutoring company. Because once you've been ejected, it turns out, from a university, you're Ronin from that point on. And I had people that I applied for jobs. They're like, "Why would you want to have this job? Do you just want to be around young people?" You know what I mean? I'm like, "Skip you. Show me the sources." My students loved it. My last semester, I had 90-some students petition the administration to take my class that was capped at 30. Right? They had to form a petition. They wanted it. For a small liberal arts university, that's not bad. 100 people is a big audience. I had 270, 350 at University of Wisconsin when I taught history of medicine. But as a grad student, and I can very proudly say I'm the only grad student to ever teach at the level of a professor at the University of Wisconsin. I taught a whole course on medical history and medical terminology.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. They want to know the dirty stuff, though. It's the dirty stuff you got to bring out.
Why do you have to bring it out?
Yeah, you do. You got to have women having abortions. How do you get an abortion in antiquity?
How?
It's chemical. They got all sorts of the midwives. They have all sorts of, you can regulate your own. Wouldn't it be cool if you were a woman and you could regulate your own?
Yeah, we do that now, right?
Yeah, it's called.
We have like IUDs. Well, we had these like little metal prongs.
No, I mean, but chemically, so that
those things have chemicals on them.
You could turn up your flow and turn down your flow. Mm-hmm. Right, dial it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why would you want to be doing that? Because there's a point of ecstasy. People don't realize in antiquity, in a woman's there's a point where she is close to the gods. There's an eclipse. Yeah. There's an eclipse, and when you have an eclipse, you have the power of that moon blocking that sun.
Is that why women, when right before they have their, they get so?
Is it because of Aphrodite? They would say, and my answer would be yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the eclipse.
And you have to. No, that's the pre-eclipse, and you have to, right? And you have to channel that within a woman's being in order to be a proper mate. Yeah.
You have to channel that within a woman's being.
Yeah, you got
to be a proper mate.
You got to make her ovulate. It's all about that production, right? Even the Scythian women who hunt men, the only reason they gave them the Satyrian was to cause them to be able to, because they're already paralyzed. Can you imagine being paralyzed in a...
No, I can't.
After someone has given you a drug that induces psychosis, they called it the the fury, the fear. So they've put you in a state of psychotic fear, and they've given you a drug that gives you an erection, and they manually bring you to orgasm. For what?
For what?
That's got to be a state to be. I mean, if you could take somebody there. Is that what caused the Enlightenment? Was it people sitting around? You know what I mean? Was it people sitting around who followed? You got the Templars. Templars are licking and ass. And head. Yeah.
They're looking at them?
Licking
them?
Yeah. Initiates lick. There's a purple cross on the bottom of that where they give the medicine, drizzles out, and those initiates. That's where they start to get exposed to it. And you can do it, they said, in the papers, that they're the court papers, so to speak. Mm-hmm. The investigation papers. The Templars were, it's one of the reasons they were persecuted so heavily, is because they were having them lick their, or they could also lick the itself and get that purple stain.
What sort of pushback or backlash have you gotten from the mainstream academic institutions for talking about all this stuff?
None. No. It's better to ignore, right? It takes them, a professor from Brown told me it'll take them 10 years to catch up with your research. And they're just
Didn't something
behind,
happen with the
behind.
church? Didn't the church or something come make a statement about you specifically?
I was investigated by the Catholic Church.
You were investigated by the Catholic Church when?
When I worked for the St. Mary's University.
Really? And how did you find out about this?
I had a Monsignor come to me and say, hey, I've been to... he was one of my students, right? Keeping tabs on everything and learning Greek. He got to learn Greek in the process. So I hope he kept it up to this day. He told me, he said, I've been to 5 meetings about you.
What?
I couldn't help but laugh. You know what I mean? At this time, I had professors coming to me going, you're going to get fired. You're going to get fired. And, oh, by the way, we support what you're doing, but we're not going to put our asses out there.
Right.
I thought, well, cowards, but whatever. I had to stay true to the sources. So I did. So the Catholic Church, look, a student on campus claimed that she woke up at 4:35 in the morning, and that I was floating. I floated through the door of her dorm and hovered over her roommate and had sex with her roommate as I hovered over her bed. And then she woke up and made a noise, and I extended my hand and paralyzed her. Now, this student was released from school due to the mania. It was a mental discharge.
This was one of your students?
No, she wasn't one of my students. She was one of the students that was working on the play, the Medea, that I was the contracted advisor for.
Okay.
And the student that I allegedly hovered over and made cosmic love to was the lead role as the younger form. We had two forms. We had a younger, the one that killed her brother, and then an older form. Yeah.
And
so they had a hearing. They had an inquiry.
So who did she tell this to? Who did she tell the story to?
Administration.
And then how did the Catholic Church get involved?
The Church had an inquiry, and the bishop had to come and sit. I'm sure it was hilarious. I had a group of people before the inquiry. I had a group of people come to me and say, I was like, who are these people in my office? And they said, we know who you are, and we know what you're doing, and the demons that you're working with. And I was like, excuse me? Right? Excuse me? And then there was the inquiry, the formal inquiry, and it was I'm told it was 2 charges. Number 1 was demon possession, which personally I think that's pretty cool.
That's pretty metal.
No, that is, yeah. Number 2, I was opening portals.
To where?
I don't know. But do you think I would be at a Catholic
Can you find this?
university?
Is this published anywhere?
Yeah, it is.
I could maybe find it.
Now,
Steve,
wait,
you gotta find it.
I got to finish, though, so people can have a little sympathy for me. I was fired after the production of the Medea. It was wildly successful. People said it was the best thing they ever produced, right? But I had choruses of Catholic university students pointing those.
What?
Yes. They said they wanted it accurate. So we brought in the priapus. We brought in what they call the fascinum. It's a Roman implement. It's a and when you point it at somebody, like a priest who's involved in doing naughty things to children, you are throwing off from the stage that corruption. You're purifying your audience. And it was quite successful. It succeeded to the point that, the Monsignor that I knew, and I probably shouldn't put he's probably going to put his, no, he's a big guy. He said, look, he brought up the book. I had just published a book that was about ritual in the early church. And apparently that was what was making all the hullabaloo. The story of me flying through the air and all of that just kind of added an atmosphere of, it was like religious frenzy. And the Monsignor just explained it to me that the charismatic wing was quite active in that area, and he didn't like the direction it was going, and I just happened to be one of their targets. So that's why, they did what they did. And, once you've been ejected, you can't go back. There's no way. I'm Ronin now. So what I do is I use the same skills.
You're what now? What was the word you used?
Ronin.
Ronin.
He's a Japanese samurai who's lost his lord. Mm-hmm. He's got no protection of the institution, nothing like that. Yeah.
What is this? Okay, this is an article.
All right. So, I'm sure Hillman can put more.
Fired over the phallus. Adjunct at St. Mary's University of Minnesota says his contract wasn't renewed and he was fired from a custodial job on campus due to a play prop.
All right.
Now get this. No.
During the week, this is it? Hillman was contracted by the Catholic University this fall to translate Seneca's version of Medea, a story largely about a woman's revenge on a husband who's abandoned her for a more politically advantageous marriage. But Hillman, technically the production's playwright, also highlighted Medea's undertones about greed and suggested that the cast members deliver admonishing lines about corporate greed while pointing fascina at the audiences used in the ancient world in certain rites and to ward off evil. Fascina are supposed to embody the divina power of the phallus. In that spirit, the props being prepared for the show looked distinctively like one of the props pictured at the right.
There was one that was 6 feet long that they carried in procession into the performance. Now remember, these are sold out too. All of our performances were totally sold out.
Really?
Yeah, and they said it was the best. It was the best thing that the theater department had ever produced. Yeah. So when I was fired after this, people were like, "What? What's going on?" And when I was fired, the American professors, it's like a union. That's what it is. National Association of University Professors sent a couple of people out to inquire about my termination. And they ruled that I was improperly terminated. And this was not, this was just because of what I was teaching. It had nothing to do with anything else. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was nice that the AAUP would come out and do that. They had the international one do the same thing. There's an article on FIRE, which is the freedom for free speech on campus. Mm-hmm. And the act of the university, St. Mary's University firing me, got them put on the top 10 list of bad places for free speech.
Really?
Yeah. The USA Today is the one that publishes it.
Can you find that?
Yeah, it's got to be on there. And they made the top 10 list because of what they did to me.
Wow, yeah. No way.
So, and there's quite an article. They had me in a place where I had to even work. And I didn't mind because I don't mind doing dirty jobs, but I used to clean toilets. Because the professor's salary they paid me was not enough to feed my children. Mm. Yeah, so you can see why the Monsignor was like, okay.
How did that affect you personally after this all happened?
It shut off my, look, every time something has happened in my life, it's helped to forge my path ahead. When the head of my department told me the Romans wouldn't do such a thing as take drugs.
He said, why would they do it why would they do that back then when we don't do it today, right? Something to that effect?
She said they just wouldn't do such a thing. Mm-hmm. They just wouldn't do such a thing, right? Mm-hmm. When she said that, I realized, okay, I've got to go investigate everything there is to know about drug use in the ancient world, right? I've got to find the I've got to dig the hole, and I've got to find that reality that lies there beneath the ideas of scholars, right? That real history. I want to see it. And so, yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about that we haven't talked about is Lucian's writing on Alexander the false prophet.
Yes, good, nice.
Can you talk about that? Who is Alexander? Was Alexander the false prophet a real person, or was this just a story?
Yeah, no, he's a real person, and Lucian is a real person writing about another real person in Cappadocia, up on the Black Sea again. They're up on the Black Sea, and he started a cult, an oracular cult, and he's called Lucian says, look, I hate to write to you about bad people. History should be all full of good people. Right, but just like this other guy, he says, wrote about this Laestes, I'm going to write to you about a Laestes that is, like, he's the worst. Mm-hmm. He's the worst of these guys. And it turns out when he's a boy, he's entered into the trade, and he becomes, because he's known for being very good looking. Yeah, he's got a really good look to him.
Mm-hmm. Alexander the false prophet.
Yeah, right. right? And he travels around. He gets the attention of a couple of very wealthy women who set him up making oracles. And he has imported to himself boys, young boys, who are exceptionally handsome. And he has a very specific list of what they should and shouldn't look like. You know, don't take the short ones, take the tall ones, you know. Don't take the ones that have problems on their skin. Take the ones that are smooth, right? That kind of thing.
I'm talking about like ancient eugenics.
Yeah, kind of like keep your lover in the best ideal form. Remember, the gods are just the ideal. That's why you see a lot of depictions of the gods as this, you know,
Jacked.
yeah, and
Zeus.
and young.
You know what's weird about the depictions of the gods and like even the sculpture of like David and Zeus is they were all like these big jacked warriors, but they had small wieners.
Yeah. That's what happens when you spend time with the Queen of the Amazons, man. Hercules did for a year. She made him walk around in a dress. You know why?
Wait, who made who walk around in a dress?
Oh, the Queen of the Amazons. And if you think the Amazons are myth, they're not. We have Athenian graveyards full of people that they killed. So these are, again, those warring, roaming tribes around the Black Sea that just plunder. They live by plunder. And by the way, the Thracians are big on the eunuch trade. And making eunuchs is a big deal, and that's why Odysseus is so.
What's a eunuch?
When I cut somebody's off, I turn them into a eunuch.
Got it.
Because what am I doing? I'm changing the pharmacy.
Right.
Right? That testosterone is going to change whatever the...
So when you cut off their they have no more testosterone?
Yeah. So
and what's so good about that? What's so great about a eunuch?
Because then you can use their... Right? You can't use it otherwise.
Oh, so it's got to have no in it.
Yeah, it's got to have no testosterone. That's what they need. So they're turning the person into the dispensary.
They're turning the person into this dispensary of drugs.
Right. And
a drug factory, essentially.
Yeah, a communion, a place of communion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's intricate tech.
Okay. Alexander the False Prophet. He wanted these perfect looking people, tall, no skin abrasions.
Yeah. So he runs a business and it ends up in a bad way. One of the kids he thinks is murdered. Or he has him murdered, and it's not good. It looks bad for him, and that's the moral lesson that Lucian is trying to teach. Is what happens when you become profit-driven, and you have nothing to stop you, no brakes. And that's this guy, Alexander the False Prophet. But it's important to note that he's a prophet, because that's what prophets are in antiquity. There are not prophets that are not jacked in. Prophesying is taking drugs. There's no way around it. It's part of doing what they said, going into the eremon. And what is that eremon? It's the wilderness. You know what I mean? When you're in that void.
Okay.
Mark talks about the void, where Jesus meets Lucifer and converses with Lucifer. You didn't know? Yeah, it's in the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah, he sees Uranus split, and out of Uranus comes that dove with that milk, and he ends up going into the eremon, where he is tested, tried by Lucifer. Yeah, so he's going through it. Jesus, good for him. He's going through he's doing the whole right? He's really practicing. That Baptist is really practicing. And what is standard issue of every Baptist according to Juvenal? The standard issue is a shaped cup. You can put it, it's called the vitreum priapeum, or the glass. Yeah. And every Baptist carries them. That's why they take the kids out. It's the pederasty of the ancient Greek religion seeping in. And that's why Paul is screaming, you can't do this. That dude is sleeping with his stepmother. Right? No, that's what Paul says, yeah. Paul's immune to viper venom, right?
Okay.
Yeah, he is. He gets bitten by a viper, and the locals are like, you're going to die. And he doesn't.
Because he's got the antidote.
Yeah, because he's obviously using. Right? Mithridates was a great king who couldn't be poisoned to death. because he was taking this theriac all the time. He had constant antidote on board.
Right.
And Marcus Aurelius, when we get down to Marcus Aurelius, people are saying about him that he's looking better ever since Galen started him on the theriac.
He's looking better.
Yeah, like it's doing something like, whoa, nice improvement there. And he said, Galen says in his treatise to Pisa, remember, this is not made up literature. These are accounts of Roman medicine. And in it he says, yeah, this was used after Marcus Aurelius too, but they acknowledged it more. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. He says Cleopatra was in the game too. She couldn't.
Who was Lucifer?
He's the dawn bringer. Yeah, they first called him Lucifera, and he was a girl. You ever see a girl with a big...
I mean, I saw a girl with a little earlier. He showed me a statue of one.
That's the morning star.
What was her name again?
Venus.
Tell me more about Lucifer.
Yeah, he's the morning star, and he's the one who guards the gate. They call him. He's way older than Christianity, right, or Judaism. He's way older. He's part of the Saturnian religion. And what is that? That's the mystery that revolves around sun, moon, and earth. So it's it's all constellations and stuff like that, and all solar stuff, and yearly festivals and whatnot. That's Saturnian, the worship of Cronus. They call it the Golden Age. It's before the Zeus enters and takes over, right?
Zeus.
On Olympus, right.
Okay.
It's before he takes over. So Lucifer comes from that older generation. And he's a dawn bringer. What is everybody's job?
What does that mean?
It means you bring dawn. You herald...
Bring the new day?
Yes, you herald the dawn. The dawn is that funny moment when you don't have any sunlight, direct sunlight, and it's kind of they talked about it as a spark in the ether. Spinther, they call it a spark in the ether. And that's what you're preserving. When you meet as a Christian, and you get up early in the morning, this is how they originally met. They get up at sunrise, right? Now, that's why you have the associations of sunrise with, Easter and all that kind of stuff like that. They get there early because they're dawn bringers, right? Jesus is saying in the apocalypse, he says, I am the morning star.
Jesus says that.
Yes. And he's got a bra on too.
A what?
A bra.
A bra.
Yeah. It's a special device.
So what do you make of that? Why did he say he was the morning star?
Because he has to be if he's going to be the Christ. If he's going to be the one in the position to be elevated as Christ, he's got to be the morning star. That's the title. They're all dawn bringers.
Okay.
Right? Christos is a dawn bringer. Right? So, yeah, he's got to. He's following, at least the people who are writing about him in John, John's Apocalypse, at least they're making that association. Yeah, notice that they've got filtra too. The angels, when an angel pours out a filtra, right, or filtron, when they pour it out, that's a drug-containing device. So the angels that pour out the plagues, those are drugs. The beast is called Therion.
So how did Lucifer become a bad guy?
How did Lucifer become a bad guy? Because God's a liar.
Because Zeus?
Yeah. Zeus.
What did Zeus do to him?
He lied.
How?
He closed the eyes of his Ewa.
Of his what?
Of his Ewa, his Eve. In order to make the second Adam. Right? Don't you know we're dealing with sacrifice?
Huh?
Yeah. God killing his only son.
Oh, yeah.
Right? In order to elevate him to what they call the soter. That's the savior. That's the word we get for savior. Right? That's an old title for Lucifera, the female dawnbringer. That's why he's wearing a bra.
This is a lot of this is really hard to digest.
That's what that boy thought, probably.
What does the word Satan come from?
Now, people will say,
You always say in your videos or your documentaries that you make on your YouTube channel, you always say "Hail Satan."
Right. Indeed.
But you also claim that you don't worship Satan.
I don't have a religion, do you? I'm way too lazy for that.
I don't think you're lazy, man.
No. I don't. I'm not promoting a religion, and that's something I tell everybody. I don't want you to buy my books. I don't have any reason to condescend. I don't have anything to set up here and hold up and say, you should buy this. No, what is out there is a lot of Greek texts, and I'm a classicist, and my job is to protect those texts and to get you the integrity of what's in them. And what you have read from the Bible, that you have read in English, is a mistranslation. It's at best a hack job. At worst, it's a purposeful obfuscation of the actual history. And when you start looking at Jesus, who's screaming, when he's getting arrested, that he's not one of these
lay stays,
then he's, you see the real. All of a sudden, the real becomes obvious. And that's what I think is the job of a classical philologist, is to preserve these texts and get them to you.
So what does Hail Satan mean to you?
It's the gadfly.
What's the gadfly again?
It's the punch in somebody's face. It's the oestrus that you need. There's a reason you get beaten with whips. It does something. Yeah, it does something, not in a Desaad kind of way.
It shocks you?
Yeah, it brings you, I don't know, it does something chemically to you, right? It causes you to release something in your blood. You ever get the thirst for the blood? Do you know what it's like to eat? Do you think, first of all, do you think it's possible that you could give me the address where they do this? But they take that freckled redhead kid, and then we have text for this, by the way. It's called the De Ortu Walawani. And you take this red-haired, freckled kid, and you pump him full of drugs, and you roast him, slowly raising his body temperature, and you bleed him as his body temperature rises. And that blood is communion blood. That's what you get the taste for. Now, why he has to be red-haired and freckled? I mean, not freckled, red-haired and pimpled. He's got to have pimples, which makes you think, what, you got to use a teenage kid for this or something? Mm-hmm. Something about the pimples. You know it has to do with hormones, because it's right at that time that whatever's going on in his body is producing those pimples. But that's what you got to use.
Where does this come from?
The De Ortu Walawani. It's a recipe for Medea's communion, and it is sandwiched in an Arthurian tale, which is terrible. It's terribly written. It's Latin, 12th century Latin, and it's awful. It's awful. It's like torture to read it. Right.
But what sort of Greek sources does it come from?
We don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
No, nobody knows.
Is this what comes from these modern day conspiracy theories about Hillary Clinton and the Clinton family trying to traffic young kids to drink their blood and to get adrenochrome to make them young, Bohemian Grove, and all this stuff?
Context, what sort of things you've been up to before you got
a year
successful?
ago. Playing.
Were you at school?
Oh, I was at college.
You're at college?
No, a year ago you went. Was that? That's really bad.
You just not a good kisser.
Look at him. Look at that.
You don't even pregnant. That is me waking everyone up.
No, you can't, make a rocky on a bus. No, you can't ride a monkey. You can't ride a donkey. You can't ride a dog on a bus. Can I ride a donkey on a bus?
McFly guy, you know, it's not all my experiences can be a total success, but come back next time, okay? Don't forget your arm.
Oh, sorry, I got another one.
Cheers!
Doc, how you doing? High five.
High fives.
Okay. Why have a little feel of the nose? Oh, that'll ride it, mouth. Oh, God. Okay, important question. Showers or baths?
Shower.
Football. Quick fire. Football or rugby?
Football.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Christmas or birthdays?
Christmas.
Son of Dork or Fight Star?
Son of fight. No, I don't know.
Come on.
I can't say that.
All right then, Kelly or Sharon Osbourne?
Sharon!
Yeah.
Barnsley or Wolverhampton? You must answer.
Barnsley. You dance!
Whatever. Which
Further
member of
north, isn't it?
McFly is this?
And it's times like these, you baby!
Which member?
Tom.
Yes! Loving that one.
Very good. Very good.
Right, some fern up in one word.
What?
Some fern up in one word.
What? And then finish off. Took it. Oh, so cool!
Say Norwich.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Is that Horwich?